ladies and gentlemen. Live and learn. Taylor Lorenz. Let's dive right into it.
One guy, back
Maybe
me
not.
up here. I can't be the only one.
Yeah.
That's what
You're gonna start a movement. It's like
I
in
am.
Joker when they wear the mask.
They're all gonna hold me up and commit crimes in my hat.
Oh yeah, you don't want that. You don't
You
want like
voted
the next
for
assassination attempt to be
primary.
wearing your logo there.
Oh, and there she is. Perfect time.
Oh,
Let me know if you comment down below if you also voted for your May 5th primary. Comment down below.
do we have our special guest?
Yes, she is.
Are we live by the way? I can't-
Yes, we're live.
Hello. Oh,
you booted her.
oh no.
God damn.
Oh,
That was
professional
fast.
show here. And there she is.
Hey,
there she
what's
is.
up, Taylor?
I made it.
Hello,
Sorry for
hello.
the delay. I was on a call.
No problem.
No worries, it happens.
Lots of important things happening. How are you?
Big things happening. Me trying to find it.
To kind of set up where I'm gonna fall in this conversation. I like Pisco. Spoke with Pisco on the podcast. I like all these guys. Keyword guys. Not a big fan of Taylor. I wouldn't call her my enemy, but I'm not a big fan of her. I am curious to see how this conversation will go, especially regarding the dark money stuff. I've talked about it before. The dark money stuff, the internet stuff. I'm curious to see what they get into.
A new apartment.
A word?
Yeah, what happened? Did you get doxxed?
No, my landlord. No, but it is funny when they doxed me last time. They found where I lived, and then they all sort of collectively on this one thread decided it was too shitty for me to live in, and that couldn't be where I live.
No way.
Are you
But-
in the Southern California area?
I'm in LA. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
My landlord's getting divorced and is taking back my apartment, so I have to find a new spot. So
Ooh, hey,
Is that-
Damn.
Is that?
So
did
he
you do the interview with Libs of TikTok? Was that in Los Angeles?
Oh,
yeah,
you doxed Libs of
that.
TikTok, didn't you?
That
Wow.
we actually live not so far from each other, which is very funny because she doxed herself. She tweeted that picture of me on her doorstep that showed the exact street and the exact house that she lived on before my story was even up. But she met me at Aroma in Studio City, which is like one of my favorite spots, and everybody got very mad at me for bringing her there. They
Yeah.
were like, "Don't bring her back," and I was like, "I'm sorry."
And for wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Listen, I've had some disagreements with you, but that I think is my first introduction to you. That interview that you did with her, and we watched it on stream, and it was just the funniest fucking thing.
When she
I
showed
ever
me
seen.
porn, she's
I forgot about that part.
yeah, she was like, I can't even remember the context. She was like something like this, and I was like, what?
Oh, it was
Yeah.
about the books, wasn't it? About like gender.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, Eli, being a YouTuber.
Something like that. My favorite thing about her is like just how bad she's fallen off. Like she tried to get a Daily Wire deal apparently. She tried to get a PragerU deal apparently. Like she's so bad on video that she like really has not been able to scale past Twitter, and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, her whole shtick is calling out pedophiles, and then this whole Epstein thing happened, and she got phase one, and then now
You got the
hasn't
binder. Yep.
said anything, and it's like,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on? And like even some of the people on her squad are like, hey, well,
Libs of TikTok is a grifting piece of shit. Cooking.
all right, I don't think you're really doing what we thought you were doing here. It's pretty blatantly, transparently not.
Have you guys seen the picture of her, or I don't know if it's her, at the Capitol on January 6th?
Yes, of course.
Is that
incredible.
her?
That's her. She was a January 6er. Yes.
Wait, is that
It's kind of an
100%
airhead, huh?
That's when she was tweeting under the account Biden's houseplant, where she had a parody account where she pretended to be a houseplant that would belong to Joe Biden.
I think she should be the only January 6th perpetrator.
I stand by social media accounts using real names. That would solve so much of our problems with these bots like Libs of TikTok getting money for spreading propaganda and bullshit.
That should be pardoned because she doesn't have the mental capacity to know whether or not she should
Oh,
walk into the
Jesus.
Anyway, welcome to the stream, Taylor. Taylor Lorenz, journalist. Tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm a journalist. I cover technology, online culture. I wrote a book about it keeps falling down. It's back there somewhere called Extremely Online, about the rise of the content creator industry. I cover, like technology and online media, and I've been doing it for about 15 years.
Awesome.
Taylor, have you explicitly come out and talked about like your politics? Like if you had to describe yourself, how would you describe yourself? What's your policy agenda? What do you focus on?
Well, I did intern for Mike Donnellan, which I thought was hilarious because when all that came out about Biden, I don't know if you guys read Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book, but I was like, oh God. So when I interned for him, like he was so old. We all used to be like, how is this man working in politics? And that was like 2007 or something. So yeah, I was a poli-sci major and I thought I wanted to maybe even work in politics for a while, but I just love technology and I kind of got into the tech media ecosystem. And I don't really identify strongly with either. I mean, obviously I'm not a Republican. They're fascists at this, maybe they've always been fascist, but like, but I disagree with, I want the Democrats to win, obviously, compared to the Republicans right now. But on like certain issues, I think that like, especially what I cover on tech, like there's just not a super strong like alignment on issues either way. There's so much kind of like weird back and forth that
I think you're kind of I don't have anything bad here. I don't know what the proper word is. Maybe the purest instinct of what liberalism is in terms of full and complete liberty, and technology is supposed to emphasize that, and she kind of believes in that concept. And I don't know. I don't think technology has provided the optimal way to express your liberty. I do think being unvetted, it causes more problems than solutions. Even though I have issues with Taylor, I'm always curious to have conversations with people who have strong positions that I can engage with to see if it not only holds up, but to see where the foundational principle lies once you start peeling back the layers.
I don't really like over-identify. I believe in human rights, and obviously I am against fascism. So I'm like broadly, I would call myself on the left.
Is it a bit bizarre for you this day and age to see, number one, the media environment change so differently from when you started as a journalist, where I think by most accounts, quote unquote, alt media now dwarfs traditional media. So I guess I'll start there. You have worked at what we would call like establishment media. What is it like seeing the growth of alternative media and its sort of political ramifications?
And before you answer, Taylor, can you double check you're using the right mic? It's like a little.
Does it sound bad? Hold on. Is it maybe it's not
might
my
be using your
mic.
headphone mic.
Oh yeah, it's using my headphone mic. Hold on, wait. It's gonna sound better. Hold on. Does it?
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
better.
better.
Yay! All right, sorry about that. I clicked the wrong thing.
I don't necessarily agree that alt media has trumped mainstream media. I think something to really pay attention to when it comes down to these conversations is its effect, right? And do we think alt media has provided enough results, especially in terms of like voter participation, to confidently say it has out-trumped the older generation's participation and utilization of mainstream media? And hard to say. I mean, we're still having the voter participation problem, and we're still having this kind of weird discrepancy where the people who are more active in politics, especially local politics, is the older generation, and their consumption is mostly mainstream media. So I don't think it's correct to say alt media has trumped it just because it gets more views and it gets more, do I want to say attention? At the very least, engagement. So yeah, I don't think that's a correct statement.
I love the rise of all. I mean, I love this. I love it. I think it's a really good thing for the media to be, I started as a blogger, very much of like the millennial blogger generation. And I think, so many of us, pretty much everyone in my like class of millennial bloggers ended up in traditional media because that was really the only pathway. You couldn't make a living independently back then the same way that you can now. But I think it's really good to have like a robust and diverse media ecosystem. And I don't think you always get that diversity of perspectives in the mainstream media. So I think I think it's great to like have mainstream media exist. I don't want to see like all investigative journalism go away, but I do like that things are kind of that we see a lot more like sort of niche media. Things like Migrant Insider, a great Substack by this phenomenal journalist who's the only Capitol Hill reporter that files every single day on issues affecting immigration. He's broken some major stories, like that type of niche beat and niche audience. Like there wasn't really a business model for it in the olden days. So I'm pretty for it. It's obviously led to a lot of problems though, and I think that like our sort of regulatory structure, especially around like political advertisements and stuff, is not caught up to the media environment that we have now.
Is she saying that we need to regulate better? If she is, then I agree.
I think the promise of the internet in the late 2000s and that era was about sort of like decentralizing information. And so I remember feeling very optimistic about the young generation, because, you know, our parents and our grandparents and society just kind of broadly was able to, you know, like frankly lie to us when we were kids. I'm pretty old. I'm like 43. And, you know, we didn't,
43?
yeah, well, turning 43 pretty soon.
Okay, but that's millennial. Like you're
yeah.
in the, like, they were lying about the Iraq war to us all the time. You know, they lied about a lot.
But the new media, I think, you know, I don't.
Millennial or am I Gen Z? I keep on forgetting. What is Gen Z? Because I'm Gen Z. Why do I keep on thinking I'm millennial? I am not a millennial.
think I quite anticipated the problems that come with new media, because I feel like the perverse sort of profit incentives for legacy media, that's a big problem, right? I mean, it does impact coverage, but there's a different problem with audience capture now with creators. And these creators, like we'll say like Tim Pool or whatever, they don't have any editors that are fact checking them. They have no incentive to correct themselves if they make mistakes. Yes. In fact, they have perverse incentives to lie to their audience if they think it's going to get more views. And so I don't know if that's like better or worse than the old model where you only had legacy media.
Well, I would say that's not all content creators, right? I would say it's like, I think it's also, even just if you look politically, like that's a much bigger problem.
I think the best thing to think about is not going, you know, one way or the other. It's understanding that it is better that there is like a challenging industry. I guess that's the best way to put it, with alt media versus legacy media. However, there needs to be an understanding that both have problems. Now, I do think what can be the most problematic here is as they compete with one another, there's not the correction to ensure they're being optimized to the point where they're benefiting the society and the population. And it just becomes a situation where they optimize profit and views over helpful information. And that's when it gets concerning. So, of course, you have to have an apparatus to ensure that accountability is being brought to the table. That's why when we have this conversation, it shouldn't be about, you know, one or the other, because both have problems. Clearly, both have problems. But both can push each other in very interesting directions. They can work with each other in very interesting directions, and they need to be held accountable. And maybe looking at both of them, you can put them in a Venn diagram and you can see the worst parts of both when it comes down to audience capture, when it comes down to profit incentive, to ensure that things are going in a more positive direction in terms of political news, political information being given to the public. So I just yapped.
The right, even in the left. Not to say that there isn't a huge amount of people on the left that also do that. I think it's across the board. But I think that, like, I think part of the way that Trump got into power was leveraging people that. Also, I'm sorry, it's so bright. For some reason, the sun is coming in like right now. I feel like it looks like I'm being raptured.
It actually does that at the same time every day.
It's gonna like move soon. Anyway, I think that's not all independent media, but it is certainly you know, a portion of independent media, and I think those people are bad actors, and that's why I constantly write stories. You know, when they do unethical things, they put out disinformation that they refuse to correct. They, you know, take dubious deals that they don't disclose, et cetera. Like, I care a lot about transparency, and I think I totally agree with you what you just said of like that. I don't know if you said this, but you said they don't have editors, they don't have fact checkers. I want them to. I want them to adopt those principles and sort of you know, abide by more journalistic principles if they're going to call themselves journalists. Some of them just straight up don't care about calling themselves journalists.
That's one thing I really struggle with, is this line between pundit and journalist. Sorry, you can go, but like I struggle sometimes with like my own you know, what am I doing and what the role is. I view that there is a thing as a pundit who maybe has less responsibilities, and journalists, capital J journalists, are different than pundits, but sometimes it can get really blurry, and it kind of confuses me about you know, what standards, if any, apply to people who operate in space.
I think that's
a very interesting point. And I will say, recently someone tried to come at me for information I was giving regarding Ohio politics, because I live in Ohio. And they were saying, you know, where's your journalistic integrity? And I said something very simple. I'm not a journalist. So do not hold me to the standards of, you know, what journalists provide. And of course, journalists, for the most part, you would expect giving out information in a completely objective manner. But I do think there's something, suffice it to say, that that objectivity, that neutrality can be harmful, because it's not truly presenting things in a way that people, one, understand, and two, people emotionally resonate to. There is no way, just because there's two sides, that you can equate Republicans and Democrats. Republicans right now are a dead party and they have lost all credibility. So I am not going to abide by this neutrality principle to abide by journalistic integrity. I think that is a waste of my time. Now, I will say this as well. Putting out propaganda and lies and misinformation out there is immoral, in my opinion. I don't even think you need to be held at the standard of being a integral journalist. I do think it matters that the information you're giving out is something that is moving things in a positive direction. And the information I give out is always, one, stated my opinion, and two, factual. But if I am wrong, if I'm incorrect, then I am more than willing to be held accountable. But yeah, this concept of journalistic integrity when it comes to this new role and new entity is like the political commentator, the political analyst. Maybe it is just a political analyst based off a kind of media persona. It probably should be looked at a little bit differently. It's an interesting conversation. It's the weirdest D&D podcast ever. And there's a lot of people up here. I will say this, and I'm just reacting. I do in D&D every Thursday, Star Wars D&D, not on this channel.
Really incumbent on individual people to be transparent too and say, like, here are my lines. Like, I've talked to some political creators that are like, listen, I'm overtly a political creator. I don't care. So I'm fine, taking XYZ money or doing this or going out and campaigning with specific candidates or whatever. Cause that's how I view myself. And they're transparent with the audience. I think where you get into things that bother me, at least, it's like when you pretend to be a journalist or you put independent journalist in your bio and then you're turning around and not abiding by basic journalistic principles. So I wish that audiences would ask harder questions of these people that they follow. A lot of times the audience doesn't even care. They'll just eat the slop, and I'm like, no, do you know what this person's background is? Do you know where they're getting their talking points? Do you know what is their funding structure like? What are their, and they're not very transparent about that. So
yeah, I was like, oh wait, go ahead.
I never really, maybe this is a fault on my end. I never really look into where you're getting your money from. I just really focus on what you're saying. And if there's like an inconsistency or is there hypocrisy or misinformation, then I would just consider you're a bad actor based off what you're saying. So I don't really need to look up where the money is from, but maybe that needs to be something I attach into my analysis, because of course you can see a clear, what would you call it? Conflict of interest if you're getting paid by certain entities. So maybe I should look into that, but I feel like when you just focus on what they're saying, you can discover what you need already. But when they're saying anti-American propaganda, at the very least, understanding where the money's coming from, you can deem them a objective enemy, a force against American values, like people who are paid by Tenet. So maybe there's something to that.
Oh, I just want to ask, as somebody who follows the new media space much more closely than most people, how do you know who to trust when it comes to political opinions and who's grifting and who's telling the truth? What do you look for?
Also, Guy, I have to say, I love your background. I used to have that in my dorm room. I had like all these like old political signs, and I love these. I think it's such a good, like, I've never seen it. It works very well as like a YouTube background. But anyway, you said, how do people know who to trust?
Yeah, like how do you
know
choose who to trust? Because
Yeah.
you follow this space more closely than most people. So I'm curious.
I mean, I also think different people are trustworthy on different issues. You know what I mean? And I trust people to like give thoughtful commentary on one thing and not the other. And I think a lot of times too, the problem is like we see people who are experts in one thing. This is why like I didn't go to Cuba when I was asked or whatever. I'm like, people don't need to hear me talking about like foreign policy and this. Like I'm a tech reporter. You know what I mean? So like I think there's a lot of like influencers, content creators feel a lot of pressure to kind of be experts on everything. And I think that it's a bad thing for audiences to view them that way. It's kind of unhealthy. But I guess I figure out who to trust because I look at their like principles. I look at how transparent they are. I also look at how willing they are to like have conversations. Like if they do fuck up or if they do get something wrong, like how willing is that person able? Are they going to issue a correction? For instance, if they got something factually wrong, are they going to be transparent about their funding? Are they like operating in good faith and trying to get things right? And also, what are they an expert in? Are they pretending to be an expert in everything? Nobody really is, So it's kind of like, what is your niche and how willing are you to stray from that niche and start popping off about things that you don't know anything about?
Okay.
All right. Well, so structure of the show, I think we were going to get into some current events as we normally do. And then, of course, I don't know if you know this, but you did an article about this thing called Chorus, and I think someone wants to talk about it at some point.
Oh
But
my
first,
God.
for events, you were at the correspondence dinner. Do you want to talk about your
Oh,
experience?
yeah.
there?
Yeah,
How was
I
that?
was at the like Politico CBS News pre-party. So the way that it
I will say this again. I almost went to this dinner. And I'm not just saying that. I had a route, I had an invitation. If I lived in DC, I would have been at the dinner. So I do think it would have been an interesting opportunity. Hell, I might have even spoken with Taylor Lorenz. Now, of course, I would have to evacuate because someone tried to shoot up the place. But it's just it would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. Hopefully. Well, almost dying is, I guess, is an interesting experience. So I guess.
works is like there's the main actual dinner in the ballroom, and then outside the ballroom around it in the Hilton, there's like all these like media parties. Washington Post, Bloomberg, Fox News, Wall Street Journal, all like pretty much every media company has like a party that's in the Hilton, that's in one of the rooms, kind of like adjacent, like by the ballroom. So like when people are like there's no
I think I would have been in one of those outside with the media. I think that's where I would have been. I don't think I would have been inside the ballroom, if that's what she's saying. I have no idea because obviously I didn't go. So
security to walk in. It's because most of the journalists there are just going to these like parties around, and they're not going to sit through the actual correspondence dinner, especially this year with Trump. Some of them do, they go as part of work, but like most people that are at the Hilton that night are actually there for like these surrounding events, like the puck whatever, they were doing something too. So I was there for that. So I was in the lobby shortly before that guy came, was trying to do the shooting. I was not in the ballroom. I left.
You were missing from the room. When it went down.
I left actually to go to this party, the Substack party, which was at the Renwick, which was directly across from the White House. So as soon as I got there, the shooting had happened, and we got locked because it's directly across the White House. The Secret Service locked us in the Renwick, and so we were all locked in the Renwick with Substack people, basically.
With Michael Tracy about to beat you up.
Yes, that was when the Michael Tracy, Jim Acosta.
Oh, were you there for that?
Yes. I did see that drama. So yeah, there was a lot of drama that night, but yeah, it was crazy and weird and stuff. I mean, the White House Correspondents' Dinner is like just a dumb thing that they do every year to, I think it's been so like devalued by now that it's like nobody takes it that seriously except like inside DC people maybe, but.
I mean, without it, we wouldn't have Trump, right? If Obama hadn't made those comments, maybe. So
Yeah.
maybe is the predictor of our next president. We can see what happened at the
shut
last
it
one.
down. Yeah.
Speaking of parties that you've been to, Taylor, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was there a party for the quote unquote Cruel Kids Table magazine cover? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
with like young.
Yeah. So that party was the TikTok party. So TikTok hosted this huge party the night before the election. Of course, this is when TikTok was still under threat of being banned. They actually were banned for like less than 24 hours that day. And so obviously you saw, the CEO of TikTok up with Trump during the inauguration. I was in DC covering the inauguration, specifically TikTok's lobbying. So I was at that TikTok party. Yeah.
Well, because I want to connect that to something that happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, namely that Erica Kirk left in tears. And she is, this is the connection. She's also head of Turning Point USA. And there's this big conversation about, the future of the young right-wing party or the young conservative movement and what that's going to look like. And a lot of criticism in the aftermath of the White House correspondent's assassination attempt. Erica Kirk has this video where she looks like Sonia Blade. She's wearing this it just doesn't seem like she's fitting with this like young conservative mold. And you who've encountered right-wingers in the wild, both institutional right-wingers and young right-wingers, what's your take on the Erica Kirk of it all and whether or not you see any kind of direction for the future right-wing party?
Well, there is a pathway for them. I've seen so many generations because I also covered Trump. I covered the first Trump election. I was at the Hilton the night of the 2016 election when Trump came out. I went to it was the Clinton people were at the Javits Center, and then the Hilton is where Trump had his party. And that night that Trump won in 2016, there were a few reporters, but it was mostly internet people. It was like forum admins, people that ran like big subreddits, like content creators, just weird like internet pilled people, and who also had the deplorable also the night before the 2016 inauguration, or January 2017, when Mike Cernovich got up and was like, we won, like we used the internet basically, or we used Twitter, to like put Trump in the White House. So I think that there's multiple generations of like right-wing young internet pilled people, and to me Erica Kirk and Charlie Kirk represented the old version of them. Like it is very like she's out of touch and out of date, and I think the young ones resonate more with like Nick Fuentes and those types. She's too establishment. I think that like the appeal of Trump is that he's anti-establishment, and I think that like
The left really needs to understand that. And shout out Z for understanding the need to appeal to this internet space. It's something interesting to think about. You really got to optimize your social media reach as best as possible.
Like, I mean, you're just seeing this fracturing in the party. That's why Ben Shapiro's YouTube is like plummeting. You know, it's like he's part of that generation of that like establishment mindset.
So
I think. Oh, go ahead, Guy.
do you think Turning Point USA will be around in 5 years?
Yeah, because they're backed by billionaires, so they're just going to astroturf it to death. It's never going to go away.
I think there's some truth to what you're talking about. I think maybe Trump is now starting to become the establishment for a lot of people. He's heading into his, the halfway point of his second term here. But it's also just the case that I think when your party wins and you do political coverage and your party's in charge, you're playing defense the whole time. It's rough. Like the party out of power, like the benefit of being out of power is you can just play full offense the whole time. And
but not Candace and Tucker. And Nick,
true,
like they've all done, like, I think that there are people, and that's why people like Jessica Reed Krause, libs of TikTok, like a lot of even like DC Drano, et cetera, like those people, they align themselves way too heavily with Trump. And you're right, they were doing defense. And I think they didn't position themselves distanced enough where they're getting the downstream effects of it. And I think like Candace Tucker, all of those, that whole group, which includes, by the way, a lot of Instagrammers, a lot of like younger ones have made that separation.
Yeah. Well, I think when you have enormous audiences the size of like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, you're kind of insulated. I think you have more latitude to.
But she tripled her audience since Charlie's death, right? She's tripled her audience, and I think she's been able to grow that audience by going against MAGA, Trump or whatever.
No,
but also appeal to the kind of extremes. There's a lot of concern. I do think there needs to be a recognition. And when it comes down to political rhetoric, I always consider, of course, the issues, but the population that is getting affected from the issues. And the reason why that's important to consider is because you can't just ignore growing dissent. You can't. And there needs to be something to be said for the people who end up becoming groypers, who lean into this like extremism and this conspiracy brain rot from the people on the far right. It's something interesting to think about. And I do think when the Democrats retain power again, they need to really consider who are they representing and how to close the gap of disengagement and disenfranchisement from the groypers. I'm not saying that you pitch to them. I'm not saying that you treat them like they're your constituents. You treat the majority of the Americans that just want a better society, the left, like the normal citizens for sure. But there needs to be an acknowledgement that everything you do will affect these people. And do you want to increase or decrease the level of dissent? And honestly, sometimes it's as simple as making society and making life better. And people will start moving away from this kind of craziness. But we'll see. Once the Democrats win, we can have that conversation.
It's easier to get mad at the people in charge, which is why they were so flourishing when they were campaigning to say, look, they're fucking it all up. And then suddenly you give them the reins and you get these Dan Bongino, Cash Patel types, podcasters complaining about the establishment and these high level roles. And they're like, oh shit, I can't do this. So,
but really, what is the it factor though? I wonder, because you describe Erica Kirk as establishment. And I guess in terms of vibes, I'd agree with you. But like, what is that? So what, that special sauce that gives someone like Candace Owens the ability to grow by 3 times, Tucker Carlson some insulation? Is it the ability to speak freely?
Now, I will say with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, I agree with Taylor Lorenz's point that TPUSA will survive because they are funded by billionaires. 100%. We all know this. Well, now you know if you didn't know before. But I question the severity of paying attention to where they're getting funded from. But I do think it's fascinating that, yes, Candace's audience is growing and Tucker's audience is growing, but they don't really have much to offer other than conspiracy and conjecture and hating Jews. So I do question, where are they getting their funding from? Who is sponsoring these individuals? This is one of those examples where I would be very interested to see where their money trail goes. Tucker, I have full belief that he's getting funded by foreign governments. I don't trust that motherfucker at all. Candace is a little bit more interesting. I would be curious. I would be curious to be a little bit more transparent in terms of where money is coming in with those individuals.
Is it more mainstream appeal? What is it?
I don't think they speak freely, but I think they pretend like they speak freely, and they pretend like they're willing to challenge Trump, frankly, in very specific ways. You'll note that, Tucker Carlson, for all he wants to talk about the genocide and all blah, 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 blah. Okay, he put Trump in office and he still meaningfully doesn't denounce MAGA in any sort of he's not becoming a liberal, right? So I think I think that they're able to seem really kind of like truth telly and like independent and anti-establishment in a way that's just able to get them views. But I don't think fundamentally they've broken very much. I mean, they're still hanging out in the same right-wing circles,
What do you make of the discourse about left-wing populists and right-wing populists sort of joining teams here? Obviously, Cenk has been a big proponent of this, but it's become more relevant, I think, in this last week because I think Tucker Carlson is trying to set up a conversation with Graham Plattner. And I think he said he's considering having a conversation. That kicked off like a whole round of discourse. Do you have an opinion one way or the other on that situation?
Yeah, Graham should do it. Why not? Why wouldn't he? Go on there.
Speaking of HUTCH, are we voting blue no matter who?
100% for Graham Plattner.
I'm voting skull tattoo in this.
Did you guys not like Graham Plattner? I thought you guys were Democrats. Wait, sorry, hold on. Are you guys pro or anti Graham Plattner?
I was skeptical of his judgment, and I was thinking of leaning more towards the Mills. But now
we don't like the tattoo.
Clear that he's probably going to win, and she dropped out. And it's like, all right, blue no matter who. That's our motto, right?
I'm a pro Democratic Party Senate majority. I think would be the answer to that question. So I support him and think you should vote for him if you live in Maine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially considering.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of crazy anti-Jew, Nazi potential, grifty type vibes. I mean, you can be critical, just like how many people on the left are critical of Democratic pundits like Chuck Schumer. You can be critical of Plattner, but when it comes down to it, Plattner versus Mills, Republicans lose every single time. It doesn't matter who the Democrat is; they lose every single time. Republicans have lost all credibility, in every sense of the word. So that's an important thing to consider. I do think, though, Graham Plattner going on Tucker, I do think he should do it. But I do think it will highlight, is he for the people or is he another John Fetterman? Because John Fetterman looking like he's about to switch parties. And he was just a Democratic hidden spy there to ruin the Democratic credibility. So we'll see. We'll see.
Tucker has a place in Maine, and there are people that, Tucker has a massive audience. He's gotten a huge amount of credibility with certain groups, sort of swing voters, I would say, from his stances on foreign policy and stuff. I don't see why Graham shouldn't go on there. I think you should show up anywhere, by the way. My feeling is I'm not necessarily going to let everyone on my platform, but I've gone on InfoWars multiple times to talk about tech policy. I think it's good to go into different spaces and have those discussions, especially if Tucker's going to give him his platform. You know what I mean? Why wouldn't he take him up on that?
I've heard that kind of distinction between letting someone into your space versus going somewhere else. Talk more about that. Why is it different? And why do you have a principled distinction in who you platform versus where you go?
It's all about how you navigate the conversations. I've said that multiple times. I do think there's something to be said about bringing people on. If I feel like there's no value in bringing you on, then I'm not going to. What's the point of me bringing on a flat earther? I'm going to have to do a couple of weeks of study of understanding the science behind flat earth and all that, even though I objectively know that the earth is round. It's just a waste of my fucking time. This argument's a waste of time, and these people are delusional. So I do think there's something to be said there. When it comes down to these conversations, I'm not saying that you should censor people, but I do think there is value in terms of the type of conversations being had, and time is precious and time is short. So I don't want to waste my time on nonsense. Plattner and Tucker, I do think there's value there. I can argue for why this could be positive for Plattner and positive for the people to realize what type of person Plattner actually is.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on platform. I just think this whole idea of platforming is very silly and stupid. Just the notion of it. I guess I platformed libs of TikTok by destroying her in an interview or whatever. Sure. It's are you going to have is it going to be, or if you bring that person who you fundamentally disagree with into your space, are you going to laud them or are you going to make them look stupid to your audience or whatever? It's there are different ways to quote unquote platform someone. I think that if anybody wants to give me some of their audience, no matter where they are politically, I'll pretty much show up. I mean, the difference would be if I was sort of maybe legitimizing some random small person that like doesn't have an audience, like I think there can be a power dynamic there of like, okay, I'm a larger person than you, so therefore I'm like lending some maybe credibility. But I just think like,
yeah, I know it's really dangerous. But I'm thinking kind of like people got a lot of anger when
I don't care about the size of the audience. I think this. I mean, she's correct. It's similar to the principle that I just outlined in terms of radical, nonsensical arguments that have no value. So she's correct about what she's saying.
Oh my God, I don't know if these are the right people. The Nelk Boys, did they interview Benjamin Netanyahu or something?
Yes, they did, which was
yeah.
What
were your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, obviously Netanyahu's just using the Nelk Boys to do PR. So, I mean, the Nelk Boys are just going to say yes to anything. And John Shahidi is like the architect of Trump's influencer strategy, who's their manager. So, of course, that's going to happen. But you'll note that Netanyahu is not going on like drop site news podcasts. Like, he's not going to show up for a critical interview. But yeah, he'll go do propaganda with like a bunch of drunk 26-year-olds or whatever. I mean, I think that was ultimately an unproductive interview. And then they were trying to do like PR cleanup where they were like calling up Sneeko and Hassan being like,
and Myron Gaines.
Did we fuck up? Yeah. Oh, right. Myron. I mean, that should tell you everything about knowledge of foreign policy. We should not listen to the Nelk Boys on foreign policy. I can't believe I have to say that in 2026.
All right. Well, moving on to one of the topics of today, which is the Supreme Court case where we have gutted voting rights. I don't know, Taylor, have you seen this and had a take on it yet? Or no?
No,
So,
but that sounds terrible.
Well, I have a feeling you have a take on part of it. There was a lot of dark money that poured into that referendum.
Yeah.
I felt what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is why we need transparency in the system. This is bad. Yeah, I mean, I'm like very critical of all this.
How much? I didn't know anything about this dark money part of the.
What are do you know the groups that have been funding?
Oh, I don't know the exact groups, but I know the majority of money that was spent, like $90 million or whatever, was from dark money groups.
Yeah.
Spent on what, guy? What do you mean?
On ads promoting, yes or no on the referendum. This is to change the congressional districts in Virginia.
Oh, I was talking about the Supreme Court decision to allow all of these like congressional redistricting to happen, or to, I guess the ultimate piece, so correct me if I'm wrong, essentially is saying it is now much.
Interesting. I am interested in IRS questions. So basically they're talking about the Voting Rights Act regarding the Supreme Court, and that is in reference to Louisiana. Well, I've already talked about this plenty. Basically, the idea is that Louisiana cannot create another district map that has the majority of Black voters, regardless, even though that there's a large population of Black voters in Louisiana. And they're removing the principle to prove, or they're limiting the principle to prove intentionality behind racial and voter discrimination. And you cannot consider proportionality, and you cannot consider the effects of votes being disenfranchised. So it just gives more credence to Republicans to create maps that make it harder on minorities. That's the biggest thing there. For Virginia, he brought that up because that is a conversation of gerrymandering, but gerrymandering in lieu of like the people helping, but the effect, the conclusion is positive because it attacks against the Republican very nefarious gerrymandering that they're doing, which they're not doing referendums, which means you ask the people, do you want this? And if the people say yes, then you do it. Republicans are just doing it outright from the top. Only the politicians are doing it. They're not doing referendums, and they're only doing it because Donald Trump told them that they should do it. Whereas Democrats are doing it in response to Republicans doing it. So that's why all of that was brought up, to give a little bit more context.
Harder to challenge potentially racial gerrymandering in any of these places based on their decision.
Okay, I thought we were just going to talk about the changes in general.
You're too up to date, guy. I'm 7 days behind.
Of the podcast.
Right, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. I think there's a good conversation to have about the broader gerrymandering fight because that really does unlock a shit ton of funding because people know it's really important. To Guy's point, there was an incredible amount of money that was spent on the Virginia redistricting measure, and it was a closer than comfortable election, I think, for a lot of Democrats. But on the Supreme Court specifically, this is a decision which I think is pretty political. I know people are going to shrug when they hear me say that because I've always thought that the Supreme Court has been heavily partisan in favor of the Republicans. But this in particular, it's a gutting of one of the most storied laws in our history. Coming off of segregation, the Voting Rights Act, and for all intents and purposes, Section 2 of that act, which prevents certain kinds of vote dilution, that was passed specifically to try to encompass even unintentional vote dilution of racial minorities, has been essentially gutted by Alito in this court in an opinion that really I think is not convincing. And it would be a little bit much on this podcast to get into the weeds about exactly why I feel it's unconvincing, but a lot of sleight of hand from Alito, pretending that he's just adjusting and updating precedent when he's like wholly overturning it, and pretending that any version of this law that was intended, it was to be essentially a worthless law that can never be enforced. And you're going to see a lot of litigation in the coming weeks to try to stop elections that are already underway.
Well, Pisco, I'm curious, and this isn't like an attack, it's just like the natural question that comes up.
Yeah.
Everyone's calling the Supreme Court super partisan, right? And they also just passed this thing allowing God, I can't pronounce it, the birth control pill to be tele-mailed to people, which is a progressive decision. Is this, them playing cover, but also being partisan? Is it like, oh, well, sometimes they compromise? Like, how do we square that circle? Like, where does that fit into the narrative?
Yeah, so I don't think that all of the Supreme Court decisions can be thought of as totally explained by partisan blinders. I don't think that that's the case. And there are some situations where there's just no fair reading of precedent that would allow a certain decision to stand. So, for example, even in the tariff decision, I mean, there you kind of have business interests aligned with legal reasoning that really couldn't support these emergency tariffs of unlimited duration and unlimited amount and quantity. And so, in other words, I don't view the only metric and component the Supreme Court considers to be what benefits a particular party. I just think it's a very strong bias. And here you have an example of a building chipping away of the Voting Rights Act over the course of a decade plus, which seems ideologically rooted, where different issues that don't necessarily connect with each other, such as the Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act and certain aspects of constitutional racial gerrymandering, is being used, I think, to infect the court's precedent, which is otherwise clear that this kind of law is allowed under Section 2 of the 15th Amendment. So, in my opinion, like, you can't just say it's all explained by partisan bias, but you can look at the.
I agree with Pisco here. I could simplify what he's saying, but I think people understand the Supreme Court can't make it super obvious that they're being biased towards Republicans. The Supreme Court also has to consider a legal precedent and have to have sound legal arguments. And in situations regarding like the tariffs, the legal precedent would be dangerous, especially with that. Not especially, even when a Democrat takes over. For this one, the backlash, the consequence will never be harmful to Republicans because it's biased towards the majority population, white people. So that's what Pisco said simply.
Pattern here in the track record, and whenever there's an issue of enormous political consequence like gerrymandering is, I think the court has put enough on its scale, and you can tell by how convincing the opinion is also. And if you read the majority opinion, it's not very convincing.
Well, Taylor, trying to rope you into this, do you think we should expand the Supreme Court?
Oh God, I have no idea. I did do my high school. You had to do like a big project, like a big research project, and I did it on the like FDR court packing plan from like the 30s or whatever that was. So I should like have a stronger opinion now, but I genuinely don't.
You don't remember your
high
school project, God.
Well, like I kind of remember like the arguments for it back then, and I remember this was like a topic of conversation a few years ago, but I feel like it kind of got dropped. Are you guys? What are your thoughts on?
I respect Taylor for not saying like I don't have expertise here, so I'm not going to comment. I respect that. I respect it.
That.
I think it's pretty chicken shit that the Democrats, I'm gonna be honest, this is one of my gripes that Josiah and I share, don't fully embrace court reform now. I think it's necessary for all the other kind of regulations Democrats want to pass is to do something and unpack the courts from when they were packed by Mitch McConnell and friends during the whole Merrick Garland situation. And so I'm frustrated that more Democrats aren't embracing it.
I think we're gonna have our weekly fight now. Pisco, are you ready?
Oh yeah,
Okay, let's gear up. I think like the job of advocating for packing the Supreme Court, which I would say I'm in favor of now because I just don't know what the better options are. It just feels like there's no good options really. And this is like the least bad option. But I think it's up to the commentators and people outside of the actual like political apparatus to make that case. Because to me, it's like if it were up to me, if I was like advising presidential candidates, I would say probably don't run on it and don't like signal in advance that you're going to do it. But if we get a trifecta in 2028, day one, push.
No, I do think there is energy and momentum for Supreme Court reform. Now, packing the court, I don't think there's momentum behind that. But I do think people are interested in things like a ethics code. They are, and you can message with that very well. They are interested in things like potentially term limits. because Supreme Court justices have proven that they are partisan. So the idea of no terms limits has absolutely no validity nowadays. I think those two things you can position on. It doesn't need to be like your platform, right? It doesn't need to be the first thing you talk about. The first thing you should be talking about is affordability and the economy, but I do think you can talk about the Supreme Court.
The Senate to scrap the filibuster and just start doing big things like ban partisan gerrymandering, do court reforms, etc. But you understand that, like, would you acknowledge that there's like some risk that might not be necessary with the like heads of the party actually running on that policy?
Do I acknowledge that there's some risk? Yes, I acknowledge there's some risk. Yes, I do.
Okay. Maybe it's just maybe the only difference of opinion is just how much risk there is versus.
That was not a fight.
No, like I acknowledge there's some risk. I think the question is like how important, how vital, how critical is a certain thing to your agenda, and court reform is critical to our agenda if we want to get anything of consequence passed in this century, in the next 4 or 5 years, and being able to do it quickly. And so, given that it's essential, right, just like getting rid of the filibuster is essential, we just need to start acclimating our constituencies to create the kind of arguments and structures in favor of this and make it an issue. Just like, by the way, Trump has made an issue out of the ballroom. That's something else that's a current event, is out of this whole chaos of the assassination attempt. Everyone just
that's an issue, but it's not an issue that leads to voting. I do think this is interesting. This is an interesting argument or conversation that's being had here. When it comes down to what you should or should not be talking about, can you condition constituents to get behind certain rhetoric? Especially if there's momentum there? Yes. Do you want to put things out there and then when you get in, you enact on things that you haven't technically positioned on? That can be seen as like misleading. I advocate for the principle of authenticity and transparency. So I'm going to lean into Pisco's camp here, in that I think it's appropriate to message. I wouldn't get radical on it, and I wouldn't enact promises you can't keep. Like, you can't guarantee you'll get rid of the filibuster, but you can position and message about congressional reform because of the inability to pass policies because Republicans refuse to do anything that helps the people. You can message like that without explicitly saying you get rid of the filibuster, because that's an uncertainty. You can message about Supreme Court reform, but can't specifically say you're going to do court packing, because I can't guarantee I'll get that done. So I'm kind of leaning to Pisco. There's things you can say to get momentum behind certain principles of progressive change, but false promises, I probably would stray away from, like, these absolute ideas of I'm gonna do this and you don't do this, and people like Democrats suck, So that's where I'm at.
Talking about the ballroom, you have Ashley Sinclair, who, by the way, at some point we should invite to Buckus. Talk about how they
should have her.
Oh, do you have the
100%.
connect? Pisco's been asking for it.
Yeah,
I think we need to. But like, you see how they have these conversations behind the scenes, and maybe it's a nice dovetail into the course conversation at some point about what messaging to do, and they're all picking ballroom, and like, so there is a way, I think, to shift opinion, and maybe part of that is being strategic about who takes the lead here. And okay, fine, I'm not going to make the most vulnerable representatives and senators be the ones to carry the flag here, but I think there needs to be some sort. Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's about them. I would say it's more about like the candidate. So whoever the candidate's going to be, if it's AOC or Kamala or Newsom or whoever, I do think there's strategic value in hiding your power level on this particular issue, because what I don't want to do is to juice an electorate that's pretty depressed. Like, the MAGA electorate right now is really depressed. Like, we're seeing the turnout on the Democratic side versus the Republican side. It's really bleak for the Republican Party right now. And as soon as you start running on, like the presidential nominee starts running on, we're going to get rid of the filibuster and then pack the court. I mean, that would be probably the most transformational thing that the government has done since like the 60s and the 70s, with LBJ's like war on poverty and Medicare and all that stuff.
Short-sighted here, though, because Newsom's already had the conversation on Brian Tyler Cohen that he would entertain conversations about Supreme Court, but he's uncertain about it because of the idea of you continuously packing it to the point where it's larger than Congress. I think that was a solid point he made, but he also advocated for the idea that I'm just willing to entertain, we need to do something about the Supreme Court. We need to. So it's like, Oh man, I think we're getting a little bit into the weeds of semantics here that I don't think is necessary.
And so that's my concern. Guy, what do you have? You look like
Well, I just don't think that people want to hear our leaders talking about getting rid of the filibuster right now. They want them focused on cost, like affordability and stuff like that.
I agree.
So I think that conversation will become much more relevant when Alito and Thomas bail out before the end of the year and Trump gets to nominate Emile Beauvais and Aileen Cannon to be on the Supreme Court. You can get a lot more people saying, okay, fuck this noise, but they've already packed the court. So I think it's just returning fire at this point if we do. But You're right, Hutch, you said it. Like, first you got to get rid of the filibuster. That's going to be a big task alone.
I don't know if it is, man. I actually think there's a very decent chance they get rid of the filibuster in the next trifecta. I really do. Yeah, I do. I think,
Not so sure about that.
I don't know, man. Obama was on Brian Tyler Cohen's podcast just 2 weeks ago talking about how basically it needs to be done. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if more pressure kind of mounts. I don't think it's going to be a topic that comes up a lot during this like midterm cycle, but as soon as we get into the next presidential cycle, which I think is going to begin like right after the midterms, I think they're going to start announcing in like December. I do think like that conversation needs to be had. And I think there's more kind of leeway to talk about the filibuster, but I just hedge a little bit on committing to packing the court. I mean, what do you think, Soyfield?
I kind of understand the risk of, hey, this could hurt our chances and invigorate them to say, look, they're about to become draconian and take everything away from you. Everything you ever feared is going to come true. The thing is that we're going to do that anyway. And I'm not so sure that making them understand what even the filibuster is. Like, imagine explaining that to a MAGA voter. I don't think they'd want to vote for it because I don't think they'd get it. I don't think most people get it. And I don't think the MAGA voters are suddenly going to become this like even more cultish and loyal base because they're like, oh my God, like I now understand like civics and I'm going to like take my understanding of that and vote extra hard for the Republican Party. But
I'm not convinced we shouldn't kill the filibuster if Dems take the Senate in the next year. Like, if Dems take the Senate, why don't we just take the sting out of it and do it while Trump's in office?
I agree with that for sure.
And just hit him with a bunch of legislation that is actually popular. Maybe do something good for the country. I mean, doubtful he'll pass it, but I mean, these kind of conversations I think are in the weeds anyway. In a way that like you guys are mentioning, people don't really care about as much. As
I agree with Taylor. That wasn't a fight. So maybe
it wasn't really.
We'll dovetail into the chorus thing.
Well,
all right. Yeah, let's get into
before we get started,
yeah?
did you guys see that there is a job opening? So if you guys are big chorus defenders here, they're hiring.
Oh shit!
I
applied after your article and they rejected me. So I don't
wait.
know.
Oh, to be in
Wait,
the program?
really?
Yeah.
I also got rejected.
That's not fair. That's fucked up.
Yeah, I was like more dark money. Give me.
But you would you disclose it?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I tweeted it out before it even happened.
So where's the problem? You know, like
We're gonna do it. I mean, but just so you know, I've been trying to get Hutch to come to dinner every day, and I say, Hutch, where are you? What's going on, honey? Like, the food's ready. It's getting cold, and he's just staring at this big wall of Post-its and pictures. He's been writing them on the pesto. So he's going to lead his this course discussion with you, just so you know.
Yeah. What's going on? I mean, their second class finished, so they're done. I don't know that they've started. I think they're recruiting now for the next class, which is why they're hiring this partnerships person.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to focus on like the current sort of core stuff. I did want to talk about your article a little bit, if you don't mind.
Sure, let's do it. Why not, guys? I'll talk about it till the cows come home. It's so crazy to me that when I was in DC, I ran into someone from 1630, and she was like, "It's never gonna die," and I was like, "It's never gonna die. It's never gonna die."
Well, listen, I think it would help the discussion. Well, first of all, I want to say, like, I think your overall focus on transparency when it comes to money and politics, that is necessary journalism that needs to happen. And in fact, despite the issues that I have with your article, and we can dive into that, I did learn a lot about like dark money structures because your article made me look into it. And so I do think that there's a really vital role for journalists to be discussing this issue. And so
Taylor, she's too giddy. She does not have an unlikable personality by any means. I'm not gonna lie. Even though I don't agree with some of the things she says, a lot of things she says, and some of her actions, she's spunky. She's likable. She is likable. Look for that.
You know, I appreciate you bringing attention to that, and I genuinely mean that. But I want to ask you just a few questions before we get into some other things here. What do you think is the crux of, like, if you had to describe the crux of your reporting in this Wired article, like what would you go with there? How would you describe it? It's like the main points.
Yeah, I think the main point is basically like what I want people to walk away with, kind of what you just said, which is that like this massive, notorious dark money group is funding this program that influencers took part in that claim to be journalists, and that these influencers basically were taking undisclosed political money while promoting political messaging. For instance, I think that let me just give an example. So I think that consumers and viewers, readers, whatever, right, like news consumers deserve the right to know if the person that they're receiving information from is, one, taking political money, and two, taking part in like messaging sessions, like getting, sort of information given to them by certain political interests, whatever, right? I think that they should know that. Journalists, for instance, like myself, anybody that basically works in mainstream media, you cannot take part in any dark money political funding. That would be so unethical. It would violate every single ethics. You could never do that and work in mainstream media. But I think the problem with influencers is that, listen, and I have friends in that program, but like some of them, it's like, whatever, they're political influencers. They don't feel like they have to disclose it. I think they should disclose it. But there are a lot of other people in those programs that are calling themselves journalists. And a lot of them actually wanted to disclose it. That's how that article came to be, is that 7 people in the program came together, 7 of them, and were like, hey, we wanted to disclose it. We want to post about it. We're being told that we're not allowed to, and we'll be kicked out of the program if we actually publicly disclose it. We think this is really wrong, and we want to blow the whistle on it. We've recorded all these Zoom calls. Here's screen recordings of all these internal text messages. Here's, internal documents. Here's all of the contracts. Here's all the contract negotiations. Here's all the internal guidance on what we're supposed to respond to, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, great. Okay, well, let me reach out to Chorus and 1630 and talk to them about this. And obviously they didn't want to talk on the record, but I hope that people from that article demand more from the content creators and demand that these content creators, are more transparent about funding. And most importantly, because I don't even think it should all be on the content creators' fault. As I said, so many content creators did want to disclose, and they were told they'd be kicked out of the program if they did. The people that run these programs, Courier Newsroom. I don't know if do you guys know Tara McGowan, Courier? That's
no, I heard
crazy.
you talk about them before, but
yes, they're like the other big. You guys should. That's like your type of. That's like the other big lib like thing that funds all the Democrat stuff. Like,
Oh, you're not a lib, Taylor?
Listen. I love the libs. I'm not hating on anybody, but
hang on a second. You like free speech? You don't like the libs?
I do. No. I actually really like a lot of people in. I like a lot of people in Chorus, and I like a lot of people in all these programs. But
and I have black friends, Taylor.
What'd you say?
I'm not a racist. I have black friends.
No, but I'm saying like that program is run transparently, right? There's a lot of other funding programs that are run transparency. Even Crooked Media, you could consider sort of a form of this, although it's quite different. It's a media company. But
so overall, though, you're putting the emphasis on disclosure. You think the crux of your article is about disclosure.
I think it's about disclosure, and also unpacking what sort of, basically, if you sign a contract that says, if I take part in Chorus-based events and that puts restrictions on my content, that should be disclosed.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that because that's worth diving into. But to your point on the disclosure, okay, so the section in your article where you dealt with the specific provision in the contract that barred the creators from disclosing that they were a part of a fund, like a dark money fund.
Program. They talked that they were part of the funding program.
Right.
Yeah.
That, I think, was probably the strongest part of your article, because I think that does raise ethical concerns that are worth exploring and discussing and hashing out. And
I've also said, was it 1630 or something? What? Not knowing who funds that, I do think is problematic. I understand that they don't want to be known. They want their secrecy. I do get that to an extent. But I don't know. At this point in our society, with how much money gets moved around, I'm kind of tired of it. If you want to fund something, I do think you should just be honest and public with it. Like, this is where my money is going. Moving around money secretly, I don't believe in the concept, regardless of the PR hit that may happen. Like, stand 10 toes with your convictions. That's my thing.
And kind of collectively deciding what should the ethics be. But we'll get to some.
Well, they came out after. I mean, these content creators, several of them came out after the story came out and said, "We're proud to take dark money, and we don't owe you anything." So I think that's the energy that some of these content creators have, and I think that's a huge disservice. I think if they start to play that game, they're going to lose. Like, that's not, you have the disadvantage in that system. The right has significantly more dark money than the left will ever have.
Well, let me
ask, was it in writing that they couldn't disclose? I don't know.
Yeah, it's in their contract. Yeah, it was in their contract. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. I got to hit one thing at a time here. I feel like you hit on like 5 things that I want to unpack, but
okay.
I want to keep my train of thought here. So, the second question that I have for you is, I think it was in your conversation with Pisco, where you were speaking about the importance of journalists and editors disclosing their partisan beliefs in their reporting. Was that your conversation with Pisco or on Doomscroll?
No. Well, I don't think that you have to do that. I say that, for instance, one reason that I really like to be independent is because I like to make my views clearer on where I stand on certain issues. I think that makes me a more accountable reporter, because when I'm open and I disclose, hey, I'm coming to this issue with this perspective, Am I wrong? Like, I mean, I go to sources with this all the time where I'm like, well, this is my view, you know?
Well,
Now you
Taylor,
tell-
in the interest of transparency, earlier, I know we're being friendly here, but you do
Yeah.
hate Democrats and libs, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you hate
Sometimes
Democrats
they
and
drive
libs.
me
I'm
crazy.
pretty sure I've
I
heard
want
you say
them to
this.
win. I hate them because they keep losing. I want them to win. I want them to
Okay.
be Republicans.
Hmm.
But I mean, obviously, obviously, I mean, I don't want the Republicans to win there, especially not Donald Trump. He's a fascist.
But on this point,
yeah.
though, like, I think you did.
But I do like what my point is like if you are a journalist, especially if you're a public independent journalist, I think it's to your benefit and to the public's benefit for you to be transparent. And I think one reason people don't like mainstream media is that mainstream media will put out content that clearly has a political slant. You know, certain writers at The Atlantic, for instance, right, that like are going to skew a certain way, but they can't come out and say it. And to me, that's a flaw in our media ecosystem. I think that you should be transparent.
Would it be up to the journalists to disclose that kind of slant in the reporting itself?
No, because it depends on your slant. Like, what are you talking about? Like, for instance, I cover identity verification laws. I'm very critical of ID verification laws. I'm very anti-surveillance. When I talk to the guy at the Age Verification Association, the trade group, I say, listen, I'm a huge critic of these laws. Convince me why I'm wrong. The goal of an article, like a journalistic article, is to be factual and truthful, and to get people to understand, you know, sort of the truth of a situation. It's not necessarily to share your opinion on something. Some articles do contain more opinion, but most sort of like investigative work, or especially something like this, it doesn't have my opinion in it. Also, because like 15 people worked on this article, and my original draft was so like, you know, it goes through like so much sort of editing and review, and so many people work on it, that it's just like the end product is mostly a result of like what did the legal, you know, how do we need to sort of reword this so that it's legally factual and, you know, and stand up to some like defamation lawsuit, because that's what they kept threatening.
Well, my sense of this particular reporting is that I think you do have a slant, and I think you do. I think your opinion is
my slant is probably, I mean, as you can read from all my Wired reporting, it's against dark money, and it is a transparency.
Well, no, that's not the slant that I'm talking about. I think you have an anti-establishment slant. I think you've discussed.
Of course, it's anti-establishment.
Well, hang on, real quick. You've described yourself as on the left, or I think you even hinted that you were identified with the label of leftist. I think in your
on certain issues.
When you read the article, it's like really clear that you have villains in the story and you have heroes in the story, and you have kind of a larger narrative that I think goes beyond disclosure,
but like 15
right?
people were right. But like my name is on the top, but as you know, with an investigation like this, especially one that went to the top, that like 15 people worked on this story. So
yeah, but if you're the one who writes it, just because there's 15 people checking to ensure that it doesn't have certain problems, and it's kind of optimizing viewership and being like legally checked so it doesn't, as you say, warrant defamation, doesn't mean that the words being perpetuated based off your article are not your slant, I guess, your perception of what the story should be. It sounds like you're deflecting from blame a little bit here.
Well, I understand that, but like, for example, so you assigned the label centrist to Olivia Giuliana,
which is how she self-identified.
No, she self-identifies as a progressive, right?
No, from what I found from my original reporting back from the New York Times, back when I had interviewed her years ago, she was identifying as a centrist Democrat back in Texas. That was her whole thing. In
2024?
Maybe it was whenever I spoke to her, which was quite a while ago. But just to be clear, she never took issue with that. She never reached out for a correction on that at all. We would have been happy to, like, if she had...
I mean, nonetheless, that is an opinion, right? Subjective. It's a very subjective label.
No, it was how she... Well, first of all, I think we can correctly identify people's political sort of affiliations. For instance, if correct me if I'm wrong on Olivia Giuliana, and Olivia Giuliana works for Chorus, but her whole thing was that she was a Democrat in Texas, right? Who had done a lot of work with like reproductive justice.
Yeah, right. So she focuses on abortion, LGBTQ plus, climate, voting rights. When I look at these sort of policy priorities, that does not strike me as when I think of a centrist, I think of Joe Manchin.
Okay.
I think of like Jared Polis in Nebraska. Right?
If Olivia wants to reach out, and we honestly, the thing that you're bringing up mostly comes up on the right, because for instance, when I've covered Nick Fuentes, he will say, well, I'm not a white nationalist, or Chuck Johnson, who I cover all the time, or not so much anymore, actually, is less relevant, but he would constantly say, well, I'm not a Holocaust denier, right? And so I think at some point you do have...
We're not talking about self-identification. We're talking about proven determination based off like results of what you're doing, or like effects of what you're doing. So this is a false comparison. It's a bit of an equivocation. I will say this as well. When you're writing an article that is very leftist slanted, centrist, the terminology, it's all about context, and we understand that. Taylor's smart enough to understand that, and I'm glad Hutch is coming with a little bit of heat right now. I'm glad. Centrist is used as a derogatory term when it comes to leftists. We all know this. So the label has an intention of not identification, but is it is it degradation? What is the word? I'm gonna look this word up real quick.
Have to take a look at certain people's, beliefs and what they've expressed and try
How
to
would
categorize
you
them
define
correctly.
centrist? How would you define centrist?
A Democrat? A Democrat that's
that's
probably
very-
middle of the road, like a middle of the road Democrat, like a Democrat that could operate in a red state probably and a blue state maybe equal, like somebody
That's
that sort of
very
appeals
broad
to both.
though. That's a very, very broad.
Well, it's kind of like wait,
Wait, a centrist to her is just a Democrat? Wait, what? Oh, hold on.
How would you define
correctly.
centrist? How would you define centrist?
A Democrat? A Democrat that's
that's
probably
very-
middle of the road, like a middle of the road Democrat, like a Democrat that could operate in a red state probably and a blue state maybe equal, like somebody that
That's
sort of
very
appeals
broad
to both.
though. That's a very, very broad.
well, it's kind of like wait, the center.
Yeah. A centrist has to kind of align with values, right? It's the same like the label is like leftist, but obviously aligned with more values that align with the center of the political spectrum. You would have to apply political rhetoric and values to the identification, right?
Centrism itself, like as I think about it and sit here, there's a kind of identified more Schumer-oriented Democrat, more moderate Democrat associated with a centrist label.
Well,
And it is kind of vague, right? It's a kind of vague
but also
term.
like
Well-
hasn't, I wouldn't say that the
Well, I mean, I think Pisco's kind of copping out here, especially when he's referring to Manchin. But I'll let it.
Horace, Horace has made content with Schumer. Like, I guess I would say it's a very vague term. It's probably the most broad term because I don't think we want to get it again, like too
Well,
specific.
the important thing here, Taylor, is to Hutch's point, based on, and I found this when I read your article
Yeah.
too. You use centrist as like a pejorative, right?
Thank
No.
you, Soy Pill. Oh, I can't wait to speak with Soy Pill. Thank you. I'm glad someone said it.
For this one, we say that like when
No, in general, you do. You don't like the Democrats, and you especially don't like centrist Democrats. This
I
is
am
just like
centrist
your
on certain
ideological
issues. I think it depends on the
Well,
type
no,
of.
I
Do you
know,
use
but
centrist
in
as a
general,
pejorative?
In
Is the
general, you
question.
use centrist as a pejorative, right? Like you view these people as like these feckless do-nothings, and like I'm
And
not
that's,
like
I think you're completely putting words in my mouth that I have not said. I think I don't like Chuck Schumer and a lot of there's a lot of what he says, but there's a lot of people that are quote unquote centrist that I absolutely respect and work with and that worked on this article. Like there's people just to be clear, this article went through so many editors that have such a range of political beliefs. And I hear you that maybe you disagree that Olivia Juliana is classified as we described her, a centrist Gen Z influencer who spoke at the 2024 DNC.
I
she
think
has
when you
not
look at
taken
her,
issue with that. And
well, that's not really that's beside the point. I mean,
you
whether or not
basically
she disputed it, I think
disagree with
if most people, well, hang on, just let me real quick. I'm trying to be, I'm not trying to cut you off very much. So just let me say.
Okay,
what
sorry.
like. I think if like a reasonable person went to Olivia Juliana's feed and they saw her policy priorities, I think that they would colloquially understand her to be just sort of like a standard Gen Z progressive Democrat who's focused on progressive
is also the reason progressive has come up so much. And somebody was trying to get me to write a story about this recently, which I was like, this is not really my beat, is because so many people have tried to replace the word centrist with progressive. And this has been like a thing that influencers were actually given. This is totally separate from my story. And this is like something else. Maybe I'll write about it. I don't know, probably not. But there is an effort as certain words become stigmatized or have negative, maybe you're saying this has like a negative view with some people, they're trying to use other words. So you see them use the word progressive instead of centrist, or the word whatever.
No, I'm not talking about self-assigned labels. I mean, I think most people would look at her policy proposals and think, okay, that's just.
What do you think about Biden, Hutch? I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, so if Biden were described as a centrist Democrat.
Wait, hold on. Hold the fuck on. So if we look at it, because she tried to play this weird game where she refused to answer the question to like, you use it a pejorative, and even Pisco got to follow up like, you're not answering a question. You're weaseling out. It's like, hey, you use centrist as when they say pejorative, they basically mean you use it as a slur, right? You use it negatively. It has a negative connotation to you, right? It's like, I mean, I have centrist friends. That's like the black meme all over again. Like, I have black friends. Like, come on, Taylor. Because when we look things up, how you use centrist is clearly something that is not used in a positive way. Instead of criticizing power and the centrist Dems who willed it, Leftists hate Crockett. Leftists are literally one against her. Centrist blue MAGA Democrats are seething. Like centrist Dem black influencer have been hurting abuse. You attach the term centrist when you are criticizing Dems. Why are you playing these stupid games? This is where it gets shady. No matter how likable you may seem, Taylor, this is where it gets shady on like you're not being honest here. And for someone who loves transparency, you're not being very transparent here.
Olivia
Hang on,
Giuliana
what
was
did
a Biden dead ender, so she absolutely
That
is
does
a
not-
Biden Democrat.
That does not. No,
Would
no.
you
Somebody-
describe Biden
AOC
as
AOC
progressive?
hang on, yes,
AOC and
hang on.
Bernie were Biden dead
Exactly, yes.
enders
AOC
Totally,
and,
I would
Bernie
describe,
Sanders
I would
were
describe them as Democrat. I guess they're not.
AOC
I don't know
is
if they're
a-
not
they're
centrist,
progressives,
they're
right?
centrist.
They're progressives, right? That
I
doesn't
wouldn't
make them as
call-
centrist.
I would call them Democratic socialists, right?
They're pro-
Is that-
well, listen. If you had to choose between progressive and centrist to describe AOC and Bernie, what would you choose?
I don't. It totally depends on the context of the article
I
and
feel like you're being
because
a little
Bernie has
evasive.
been.
Oh, she's being weaselly. She's being weaselly. She can't say that AOC and Bernie are progressives. Oh, she being weaselly. Oh, I'm seeing the weasel ears coming out. I'm seeing the little nose pop out. Oh, come on, Taylor. You've been always like, Taylor, come on. Like, you're bullshitting me right now. What, Taylor, come on.
No, because look at what Bernie's been doing with his AI policy. Like, I think
Nobody
that,
would call him a centrist. Nobody
I
would
wouldn't call
reasonably
him, but I
him a
wouldn't call
centrist.
him progressive either on certain things. I just feel like
I don't understand what these words mean anymore. I mean, like
Okay, well, then-
more broadly, you said that there were 90.
You don't use the term to identify only specific positions. You use it as an overarching term to label them where they align generally on the spectrum. Taylor, you know this. You're smarter than this. What are we doing?
Did you see a list of 90 people? Is that how many people you saw?
So just to be clear, I understand that you take issue with the way that editors categorize these people, but
That's
this
an
is
opinion, though. You're inserting
it's not
an
an opinion. Well, this is Chuck Johnson saying that us calling him a Holocaust denier is an opinion, or us saying that Tucker Carlson is a right winger is an opinion. All we can do is try to best reflect the ideology that often we use self-described ideologies, but all we can
I
do
think she self-describes as a progressive at this point. So that's where I'm a little bit
at
confused.
this point, maybe, but I would say again, if you ask actual people that are further to the left than her, they will say not. So
Well, that's
all
the
we
issue.
can
That's
do-
the issue.
Right,
That-
and that's the
that's-
issue.
Far left
that's-
tankers will
And
call
that's
Bernie
the issue
Sanders a
with Tim
centrist, but it's
Pool.
not accurate.
No, but that's the issue because I think you're framing your article from the position of like the left.
But I
flank.
didn't even write
right?
that line. So like
Well,
that's
your
what I'm
name's
saying.
on the
Of course,
so you
mine,
sign off
but
on it,
I
right?
want you to understand how journalism works, right?
Okay.
The way that journalism works.
You can't play the game. I didn't write that line and then defend it. You go like, oh yeah, I didn't write that. I disagree with it. I don't think she's a centrist. But you went for a whole 2 minutes defending the take. Nah, you can't be doing that shit. Yo, that's that slimy shit, bro. That's that slimy shit, bro. That's what I'm talking about.
It's not just that Wired is my personal blog and I can go and write whatever I want, right? And I can just go and publish on Wired and nobody's going to look at it, right? No, especially with an investigation like this, the way it happens is I find information, right? I get people trying to whistleblow in this case about a program that they're in. And I go to an editor and I say, hey, I have all of this source material, all of this people. Would you be interested in a story? Yes. Okay. I work with that editor to draft the story. It then goes through rounds, in this case, rounds and rounds and
Keep
rounds and
trying
rounds of review
to
from many different editors that not only transform the
obfuscate
story, write parts of the story, add
so
things, take things away,
much
but also then it goes through legal
and
review. Then it goes through
remove
copy
herself
edits and stuff.
from
Like
the
it goes through,
sense.
so, but I just want you to
claim
understand
being
because I think
afterward.
yes,
So
my name
much.
is at the
It's
top of the story
crazy.
because this is my reporting. This is my reporting that I brought forward fundamentally. But if you're going to take issue with like random sort of characterizations, and again, I
I don't think
understand
it's
again.
random. I think it was
Well,
deliberate. I think it was deliberate.
Okay, well,
framing.
I guess
Why
you'll
don't you
have
get to
take
there?
it
I
up-
mean, like,
well,
I mean,
you'll
why
have
don't you go
take
there
it
and just
up with an
ask
edit
Taylor?
with the copy editor.
I'm trying to have a conversation with her. I don't know why you're
Well,
jumping in here.
Hey,
What
No,
I'm
no, no,
saying
because
is, like,
it's kind of a
honestly-
stupid critique to be like, hey, centrist. It's kind of the eye of the
Really?
beholder. Like, yeah, so
Really?
Joe Biden would describe himself as a centrist Democrat, correct? Yes or no?
No, Pisco,
I-
the whole
I-
point
I-
is
wait,
can you
the
answer
framing-
that first?
the whole
Can
point-
Well, like Pisco, you come on, buddy. You don't need to defend Taylor just because you like her. Like, we gotta hold people to the fire. She's being Weasley. Like, we all clearly see she's being Weasley right now. Even Soypill, who also likes Taylor, understands the weasel nature of it. It's not about the semantics of what the term means based off different perspectives. It's about the utilization based off the context of how the article is written to attach negative connotations to different individuals because the term is used in a negative way from a person like a Taylor who's a leftist who criticizes centrists. So come on, Pisco. Like, you understand this, my boy. You understand this. I think you're being a little too willing to defend Taylor. And I do think this is a abject criticism that she's not defending well at all right now.
Why are you
So
jumping in?
the
Hang on,
question,
hang on.
the question you should ask,
We
is,
can have a
Taylor,
conversation
did you?
after. Let me finish my track.
The question that you should ask is,
Oh my God.
Taylor, were you attempting to imply something nefarious when you use centrist there? Were you trying?
Of course, she's gonna deny this though. You can't ask that question. It's like asking MAGA, were you intending to it's context, it's contextual. You can't, Pisco, you can't ask that question. Especially if you're a lawyer, you cannot ask that question.
Trying to imply that they're aligned with the DNC?
Well,
Ask the question about her intention.
Listen, Taylor, respectfully, I think you were doing. I think you were doing that. I think you were.
I didn't even write.
think
I wrote the list of influencers' names. I didn't even originally.
Well, here we have.
qualify them.
We have another spot here where you say that.
Wait,
said
wait, Hutch,
hold on.
before you do the next thing, because
I can't.
Taylor, you did say that I was putting words in your mouth, but if you search on your Twitter centrist, it's very clear that you use this as a pejorative term, and like that can be your opinion, that's fine, but to claim that that's not like your ideological spin is a little
But sure,
frustrating.
but I would say in what context is it? Is it in what context? Because I think sure.
No, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Where you can use it so much in a negative connotation, and you always attach it to negative application, and then try to insinuate that you can, when you use it other times, it doesn't automatically apply that negative. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that.
Certainly, do I get annoyed at certain centrist people? Sure.
I think that there was an intention there to be disparaging, and I think it's broader than that.
Okay, but this is just honestly, I didn't write the sort of things. It's fine if she had
It's
taken.
your name.
Just let me
You are
finish.
credited with
Instead
the
of
story,
just let me finish.
Well, you
guys,
have
sorry,
been cutting me
confessions.
off pretty consistently throughout this entire exchange.
All right. Well,
right?
then this is just not going to be how we're not going to be able to have a conversation because we're
don't-
talking about a story that was edited by
receipts.
so many people,
That's
and
what I
I
just
don't
did
know what to
too.
tell you
So
other than
are you- Okay, so are you distancing yourself from that label?
Oh my
then?
God!
Centrist blue MAGA. Like, come on.
If Olivia Juliana had reached out after that story and said, you grossly mischaracterized my views, I'm not a centrist, take it out, you mischaracterized it, whatever, I would have been happy to bring that to the editor. And the editor could have looked at her positions and decided whether or not that was correct.
Taylor,
this is how
her
journalism
opinion
works.
But Taylor, her opinion is not especially relevant. Like if you're saying that the language, if you're saying that the centrist language
oh my God.
Was not something that you picked.
He's correct. Like, I consider myself a centrist, but I consider myself a centrist because I hold political values that align with the left or right, depending on what we're talking about. Not the current right, because MAGA's insane, but I just hold values that are my own. Now, nowadays, I definitely lean more on the left for sure because MAGA's so crazy, but I've always called myself a centrist because I'm not interested in aligning with different things. My principles are my own. With that said, though, if I call myself a centrist, being like a very nuanced, moderate political pundit, political analyst, and political personality, it's different from me calling myself a centrist versus a leftist calling me a centrist because they're using it as a slur. So, like, we understand language, people.
Is that your way of saying that you're kind of distancing yourself from that language?
I would have until this conversation called Olivia Juliana a centrist because she's a Democrat in a red state. And I would imagine that most people that are the Democrats in the red states lean to the center. Also, when I had spoken to her years ago, that was my understanding of her. And also, that's again, we did not receive any criticism of this. This is the first criticism that I've even heard of this.
Well,
so
I think it's important because I do think that it was.
I'm sorry you feel this way, but this is just completely
you don't need to apologize to me. I'm just.
I mean, it's just completely unproductive.
I feel like you're becoming quite defensive and evasive right now.
No, it's frustrating because I feel like I'm dealing with the white nationalists because this is.
You're dealing with a white nationalist? That whole thing was like, Taylor just so many issues with everything she said in the last 20 seconds. That's why I keep on pausing. First, she was like, hey, I didn't write that. A bunch of other team members wrote that characterization of Olivia. And then she was like, you know what? I would categorize her as a centrist. So you try to detach yourself from the characterization. Then you double down 2 steps, both on the floor, and go like, she is a centrist. Your rationale? Because she's a Dem in a red state. What? Like, what? What kind of explanation is that? That's fucking stupid. That's a stupid explanation. It's like, you know what? You're a white nationalist. You're acting like one. I'm not saying she's called him a white nationalist. He's acting like a white nationalist. Again, using a term to degrade the person that she's speaking with. So Taylor, getting cooked, man. Getting fried. Filet mignon right now.
All I do all
Really?
day is go back and forth with the white
Hutch is
nationalists.
bald by choice, but it's not because
It
of
is
that.
just,
Just
it
so
is
you
the
know.
same ridiculous argument where it's like, oh,
You think the
white
questions that I
national-
asked you amount to like being questioned by a white nationalist?
I will
That
tell
seems a
you, they
little
are the
much.
exact. Why don't you listen? They are the exact same words you're using, the exact same method of saying, right? When we write about Tucker Carlson, and I've gone back and forth with Tucker Carlson's team on this exact issue, right? We'll say, well, we characterize you as XYZ, far right. Right? Far right is actually even more common than the right with white nationalists. And every time I write about a right-wing influencer and we say, well, we are, whatever, here's the article, here, we're asking for comment, blah, 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 blah. They will say, I'm not far right. I'm not far right. I'm progressive. In some cases, they even say, even Tim Pool types.
That's not
I'm
what
actually
Hutch
progressive.
is
Okay, but
doing.
Taylor, I think
they're
the-
Yo, I'll be getting frustrated. Like, we need to start understanding what words mean. We need to be able to follow a conversation because this is a crazy equivocation. We're not talking about self-identification. Okay, whatever.
just let me finish.
well,
So
Taylor,
my
you've been
point-
cutting me off this whole time.
Well,
Respectfully.
okay, respectfully, all I am saying is that when you're writing an article, we do our best to be accurate. Now, if Olivia Juliana is not a centrist and that's so inaccurate, again, she could happily request a correction
not
from
an
Wired.
argument.
She never did. No
Well,
one brought
Hutch,
this up.
can I
This was
reframe this? Because
never, ever raised.
the point is not necessarily whether or not it's accurate to call her a centrist. If this was like the specific pedantic sticking point, I can see
Well,
this
that
like,
seems
oh, this
what
is
it-
for.
that
Well,
seems
but
like
no,
the
but
whole
but it's
conversation that we're
not.
having.
What Hutch is getting at is that this article is clearly viewed as, hey, we're painting these chorus people who are taking this money as these kind of shills, these DNC operatives who are just paid to get these talking points and just repeat exactly what the do nothing centrist Dems do, right?
Thank God
And that's kind of
for
where the
those
perspective
people
that he's saying this is kind of like an
I mean,
opinionated.
that's taking a lot from an article that doesn't say a lot, and I don't doubt that that's how TikTokers were taking it, and that's not how TikTokers and people
Taylor,
on Instagram threads are
can I-
taking it. But if you actually read the article,
Taylor,
you will
Taylor.
see that it is quite clear what we say. And this is not a DNC.
Listen. But
This is-
you-
Poor Shelby at the DNC had to literally kept being like, guys, this is not a DNC program. Obviously, they support the DNC. But the
Taylor.
DNC has its own influencer program.
on August 27th, you tweeted, the 90 influencers involved appear to be primarily centrist, pro-DNC,
Yes.
who have not spoken about Palestine, are pro-Israel. Those are your words.
Yes.
But you just said a moment ago, you're kind of distancing yourself from that framing.
No, I didn't. What are you talking about?
That's what Toy Pill just confronted you with, and you said, well, I can
Oh my
understand why
God,
people walked
that they
away
are
with that,
centric.
but those are your
again,
words.
I'm sorry. They're centric. Again, if Olivia Juliana is not a centrist, and that
Yo, she is like all over the fucking place. It's like, I didn't write that. I did write that. She is a centrist. I didn't say she's a centrist. Like, she is all over the fucking place. This is brutal. Brutal. Hutch is cooking. Yo. It's pretty well seasoned, I'm not gonna lie. Very well seasoned.
is factually wrong. And these people are not centrist. And this is factually wrong that these content creators that are making content with Chuck Schumer, that are making content with Hakeem Jeffries, if I was wrong, if this article is wrong and it's factually wrong, then I highly encourage them to ask for a correction.
That's
but
not-
no one
that's
has
We
asked
can
for
do
a
it step by
correction
steps.
saying
So
that they are not centrist. No one.
let's just do it step by step.
Do it step by step. She's cooked. Pisco, you can't save her. She's seasoned. Bit salty, but I like salty. Add some more spice into that. But come on, bro. You ain't saving this. She's fucking all over the place.
Hutch, is it your contention that it's inaccurate to call Olivia Juliana a centrist?
Pisco, I'm gonna throw my Pisco. I'm gonna throw my fucking mouse. What the fuck? What is that question, bro? You heard soy pill. You understand this is not about the semantics of what the term is or its identification principle. It's about the context of how it's being used. Come on, Pisco. Even though it's not about that, Hutch already said earlier that she's a progressive.
I do believe that, yes, and I think that she used
Virtue
that
of
word
what?
intentionally. Well, I don't know why you're
No,
playing
no,
dumb here.
se-
Do you
separate-
understand that when Taylor uses
separate
that
the-
word, it's a pejorative?
Separate. No, wait, no, hang on. So
You
separate
understand
that
that,
intent.
Pisco.
So
You do.
you can make a critique of an article based on its accuracy or based on whether there's some bad motive.
I'm
in
trying
using
to
that term.
get to a larger.
Is it your contention? I know, but let's just
No,
let's
you
just do
wanna-
it step by step. Let's do it
I'm
step by step,
trying
right?
to, but you're
Is it
jumping in.
inaccurate? And so,
Okay.
and if it's inaccurate, why is it inaccurate?
It's inaccurate because her policy priorities do not line up with what any reasonable person would assert to be a centrist. When you
And this
look
is
at
what
the
they'll
things
say
that she's
of Tucker
advocating for.
Carlson and
Okay,
the far right.
that's fine.
I mean,
But
you can
how
say
do
you can just make this
can
argument
you
about
just,
anything.
but what does it mean to be pro DNC or
The difference is they would say that based off self-identification to detach themselves from radicalism. He's using actual positions and things that they say to determine where they lie. So it's backed by evidentiary proof, not self-identification. A little different, Taylor. A little different, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
pro-Israel?
They
What does that mean?
So pro DNC means pro Democrat, like pro sort of the Democrat establishment, what I would say, which is very much Corus's goal. And pro Israel means that the majority of people that we found that were public, which is why I think it's so crucial for them to actually release these names publicly, because I think if this is not the majority view held among their creators, they should release these names publicly to make it clear what is the ideological makeup of their Corus class. But a lot of the people that we found were also pro Israel, meaning they were expressing support for Israel. Against and
how many creators out of like all the creators
genocide.
that you saw would you say were posting pro-Israel posts? Can you name names there?
Well, that's the point, right? Is that they haven't published the roster. They haven't published the roster, but a decent amount of ones that we checked.
Did anybody in the people that you mentioned in the article, so like Olivia Packman, Brian Tyler Cohen, did any of them post pro-Israel content?
You'll have to go check their specific feeds, but Brian Tyler
Cohen,
you
claim that they were primarily pro-Israel, right?
Yeah, well, some people that are pro-Israel just don't speak about the genocide in Gaza at all, for instance, and that's
not
another
the same
thing
as being pro-Israel.
Yes, because a way that pro-Israel narratives have been shaped.
So you're pro-Israel if you don't agree with their characterization of the conflict. Okay, bet. Base. By
the media is by not mentioning the genocide. So intentionally refusing to cover the genocide, especially as it was this politically relevant topic.
Is that what you were alleging?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you look at the pro-Israel kind of creator landscape, there's a range of pro-Israel people. There's people that are straight up making content with the IDF. They're super overt about it. And then there are people that are a little bit more behind the scenes, people that are a little bit quieter about it. They might not be overt, but they're still.
You got to.
By the way, you're suggesting that if somebody chooses not to discuss the genocide in Gaza, and like, does that makes them pro-Israel? I find that to be.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Wait a second.
What I said is that some people. No, what I said is that some people who are pro-Israel, they're the way that they sort of. The way that their content.
That's literally what you said. Yo, you know what you need when you're doing a stream or recording, when you're using software like I am with StreamYard, you need a function on that software where you can immediately capture a clip that was just said, because she literally fucking said that, and then she said I didn't say that. That would drive me insane. Like, my ear's not working. Like, what's going on? What's going on?
And manifests is that they are not as overt. So what they'll do is they'll try to tamp down discussion. They'll be sometimes deleting comments, a lot of times just intentionally ignoring the issue, or when they're asked.
There you go. Intentionally ignoring the issue. And then deleting comments, you have to prove that.
To interview a politician, especially this was a big issue in the lead up to the 2024 election.
You're saying the same thing. Basically, you not talking about Israel. And then a bunch of other claims you can't prove.
You had people saying, like, sort of minimizing the issue, attempting to minimize it, attempting not to get people on the left to talk about it.
Okay, does that qualify? Does that apply to any creator that was mentioned in your article?
Well, you'll have to go through and do an audit of all of their content, but it's certainly
isn't that your job though? You made the claim.
Yeah,
you said that the group was primarily pro-Israel. Isn't it your job to go through their
from the group that we saw. From the amount of creators that we saw, that was a common theme. But that wasn't necessarily a.
You didn't say a common theme. You said they were primarily pro-Israel.
Yeah, from the group of creators that we saw, that we were evaluating.
So I'll ask again: was anybody that you mentioned in your article someone that you would say was pro-Israel?
Well, you'll have to go look at the article and figure that out for yourself.
I'm speaking with you. I don't understand.
What is going on? What are these non-answers? Yo, Hutch is. Yo, I can't do that. It's a woman. I can't do that. Yo, this is crazy.
But we're not going to, there's a lot of creators that we spoke to for this article that we know are in Chorus that weren't mentioned in the article.
I'm just asking you if anyone in your article you consider to be pro-Israel.
Well, I don't know. You'll have to, I really don't. I don't remember which creators that we named and didn't name off the top of our head, but I think you can just go and look at them and frankly ask the creators themselves. That's
I just,
a great thing to
just
do
don't know why
as
you would
well.
say that 90 influencers were primarily pro-Israel, but you can't name.
No,
a single
we said
person in
90.
your
We
reporting.
said the creators in that we were able to suss out as being part of the program. So one thing that we asked,
Mhm.
is for them to publish a roster so that people could take a broader look. Maybe this is just a section, right?
Like,
Maybe
you
this is
made
just a small
claim
section.
You can't prove.
that
Well, it
certain
could be
people-
You can't name anyone that you saw. It's like, what is going on? Where's the journalistic integrity now, Taylor? Hold on. Can I pull it up? All right, I can't pull it up, but Jesus.
Unrepresentative section.
Exactly.
that you're
Exactly.
saying.
It could be a totally unrepresentative section. They could
But
have
what was the methodology to decipher whether they're pro-Israel? Was it
mostly whether
to look
like
at-
their own statements or whether they had shown up in other influencer, like pro sort of Israel influencer efforts broadly. I mean, there are people also that I've talked to in this program that identify as Zionists privately and don't want to identify as a Zionist publicly. So I'm not trying to put specific creators on blast. I actually don't think that being pro or anti-Israel was ever something that was necessarily something that would get you in or out of chorus at all, but it clearly is a.
That's useful to clear up. So
yeah,
as
and
you
I
sit
said
here,
that
there's
I said that after the story went up too. Yeah.
But
so
in your
as you go ahead, Hutch.
But in your conversation on current affair, you did absolutely buy into the manufacturing logic that those hosts were presenting, which they were saying, like they were heavily suggesting that the creators that were invited into chorus were chosen because they were not speaking up about Gaza.
So you're talking about a guy that used to work for Brian Tyler Cohen, who was working.
No, I understand that, but you agreed with that
worked for
framing.
David Pakman. Well, listen, I'm not going to disagree with whatever he wants to say was his experience working for David Pakman, one of the leaders of Chorus. This is his former
He was
producer.
commenting on your reporting. He was going beyond his experience, and he was suggesting that Chorus was choosing creators because they were not speaking up about Israel.
He said that he was told when he worked for David Pakman that they were not supposed to be overt about the Israel stuff.
No,
and you can go back and listen to that and take issue with that. But he worked for David Pakman. I'm not going to argue with Pakman that he was not he said that he was told when he worked for David Pakman that they were not supposed to be overt about the Israel stuff. And you can go back and listen to that and take issue with that. But he worked for David Pakman. I'm not going to argue with him working for David Pakman.
He was speaking about your reporting.
In the context of his job, he worked for David Pakman. He was David Pakman's producer, so he would know that he was told when he worked for David Pakman. He worked for David Pakman, one of the leaders of Chorus. This is his former producer, who was working.
No, I understand that, but you agreed with that framing.
For David Pakman.
That those hosts were presenting, which they were saying, like they were heavily suggesting that the creators that were invited into chorus were chosen because they were not speaking up about Gaza.
So you're talking about a guy that used to work for Brian Tyler Cohen, who was working.
No, I understand that, but you agreed with that framing.
For David Pakman. Well, listen, I'm not going to disagree with whatever he wants to say was his experience working for David Pakman, one of the leaders of Chorus. This is his former producer.
He was commenting on your reporting. He was going beyond his experience, and he was suggesting that Chorus was choosing creators because they were not speaking up about Israel.
He said that he was told when he worked for David Pakman that they were not supposed to be overt about the Israel stuff. And you can go back and listen to that and take issue with that. But he worked for David Pakman. I'm not going to argue with him working for David Pakman.
He was speaking about your reporting.
In the context of his job, he worked for David Pakman. He was David Pakman's producer, so he would know better than anyone whether David Pakman, what his boundaries were around issues related to Israel and what sort of content they wanted to put up. He would know. He was literally David Pakman's producer, so he knows a lot better than I do. He has a lot more visibility into David Pakman's content than I do.
I think you're being evasive again because I'm not talking about his experience. I'm talking about his characterization of your reporting.
Well, his characterization is shaped by his experience, which he has a lot more of than I do.
But you bolstered that suggestion of manufacturing consent about this issue in Gaza.
I'm gonna again defer you to him. He actually worked for David Pakman, so
bro, this is crazy. The deflection from Taylor here is insane work. Insane. I haven't seen it this bad since like all of Mega. So it's like he's talking about a characterization from an individual stating that people were joining Chorus only if they were like pro-Israel, not defending Gaza. You bolster that, you co-sign that, you push that messaging. Hutch is trying to figure out, do you believe that they were inviting people into Chorus if they're like pro-Israel or they don't talk about Gaza? And yours like, well, talk to the guy, you know what I'm saying? He worked with him, whatever. It's like, bro, what? I am getting an aneurysm.
The framing, Taylor. You agreed with the framing when they were having that conversation.
He worked for David Pakman. So if he says that these were the lines that David Pakman drove when he worked for him, and that David Pakman told him this, and he had visibility not into just David Pakman, but all these sort of people that David Pakman worked with, I am going to listen to him because, again, he's a primary source.
Okay. Another part of your reporting referred to an older article that you wrote, I think a few months before this course one, and you had described a 2024 situation where the Biden administration was, your quote was, snubbing creators who had lightly criticized Biden. Do you remember saying that?
I think you're talking about my Washington Post article when I wrote about the Biden administration effectively blacklisting content creators.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your Wired article about Chorus, you described that as the Biden. You said in 2024, President Joe Biden's White House snubbed several prominent content creators after they lightly criticized the administration over its policies on climate change, COVID, Gaza, and the TikTok ban.
Yes. Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Yeah.
My issue.
Yo, Hutch is good at this. He's good at grilling. You should be a chef. Call Gordon Ramsay.
Issue with that is the word lightly, because I actually clicked on that article and I looked up the creators that you mentioned in that article. One of them was Aiden Cohn Murphy. He was tweeting that Biden created a man-made famine, was ignoring the law to enable
but he was blacklisted before
attacks.
all of that. He was blacklisted for the climate stuff.
Well, you mentioned him, and so like when you say lightly,
but at that point he had only lightly criticized. So Biden.
No, that's not true. I went through his tweets and I found tweets in 2024.
Jake, you're talking about Aiden Cohn Murphy, who is the co-founder of TikTok for Biden. Just to be clear, the co-founder of TikTok for Biden. So Aiden ended up being very critical of Joe Biden.
That was a 2020. That was a 2020 effort, right?
No, that was well into 2022. That was
the TikTok for Biden.
Yeah, exactly. Gen Z for Change was
but in
TikTok
2024, but in 2024, Taylor, he was directly accusing Biden of being complicit in genocide.
But we're not talking about that. He's speaking, by the way, as a member of Gen Z for Change, and he's talking about the evolution of TikTok for Biden through Gen Z for Change. And part of the reason why TikTok for Biden became Gen Z for Change, and part of the reason why there was this whole evolution, is because Biden's digital, whoever was in charge of sort of digital press there, was blacklisting creators that were even just lightly critical. And I'm not saying that Aiden
creators are not lightly criticizing Biden.
Maybe Aiden.
Again, this is like a weird obfuscation. I hate this word. I hate this word so much. Obfuscation, because she's trying to muddy up the conversation. Hutch is being very particular. He's being very precise. You said lightly. This guy wasn't light. He was clear. He was very clearly attacking Joe Biden with nasty position. So it's not light at all. That's the point.
And eventually was not, but
it wasn't just him. There was also Elise Joshi. She made similar accusations. She accused the Biden administration of being complicit in genocide, right?
No. But Elise wasn't banned for any of that. It was the climate stuff. This was the climate stuff, and for COVID. So this is all back in. No, this is all back in 2022, 2023, even 2021, when Biden started to say, hey, COVID is over, everybody get back to work. A lot of disability justice activists, a lot of climate activists were like lightly being like, hey, well, what about this? What about these promises that you made, right?
Okay, in your course article, you do reference that several creators were snubbed for lightly criticizing him. And then when I clicked on the hyperlink, you know, the creators that you did mention, they were not lightly criticizing Biden.
Because those are some of the people that we quoted as giving sort of expert commentary on that on that fracturing, which is, again, quoting Aiden, the founder of TikTok for Biden, talking about
not lightly,
but a lot of the creators that were ultimately snubbed, I would say, blacklisted, they would say,
lightly,
did not. In some cases, people from the digital team just didn't like that they were liking posts that were critical of the administration.
Well, I read the article.
Bro, Taylor, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be like, bro, can you stop playing these stupid games? You understand what I'm saying? You characterize it lightly. These were not light criticisms. So all this other like yapping you're doing is not really addressing my point.
Didn't read anything about that. I just read about.
Well, I'm happy to elaborate.
To zoom out, Taylor, I mean, the point here is not just, did they or did they not lightly criticize? It's that if you read this paragraph, it seems to be that you're painting President Joe Biden and his administration as this snowflakey, like,
oh my God, I'm so glad Soy Pill's here. I'm so glad, like, the comprehension to understand what is being said, to break it down for Taylor. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. Shout out Soy Pill. Shout out Soy Pill, man. He's a legend.
You can't even say the slightest bad thing.
But
in reality,
they were extremely the Biden administration, the way that they dealt with not just the sort of the creators, compared to Obama, not compared to Trump. Trump's even more crazy. But really, I would say compared to Obama, they were incredibly sensitive. And I think that sensitivity only grew throughout his presidency for so many reasons. Number one, he was older, and I think there was a lot more protectionism. They were less likely to let a lot of creators in. They were getting nervous about unfiltered press. This is also why they started to get very prickly with the actual journalists as well. and again, nothing compared to Trump. Like Trump kicked out all the reporters from the Pentagon and just gave us influencers. However, he was incredibly prickly, and still even compared to his team, compared to most of the other.
Well, Taylor, I'm just going off of your reporting, and I did read both of these articles like multiple times. I tried my best to really take what you were saying at face value and approach it in good faith. And just in your reporting, the creators that you did cite, I think, went well beyond
eventually, but not when they were blacklisted.
No,
eventually,
in 2024. In 2024.
Khalil Green, I'm sorry, Khalil Green, and Khalil Green is not a radical. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not true. Like, these are not a lot of these people. A lot of these
I'm not calling them a radical. I'm
okay, but I'm saying
taking issue with your characterization of their criticism.
Elise and Aiden eventually began criticizing him a lot more openly. However, neither of those started criticizing him very openly
in 2024.
No, okay, but neither of them were doing that when they got blacklisted. And Khalil Green has never come out and been some sort of aggressive critic.
All right, Hutch, you got to bring up fucking dates, because Taylor's saying they weren't critical before, so now you got to bring up dates
of the Biden administration.
What was the timeline for when they got blacklisted? Do you remember when that happened?
Between 2020 and 2024, it's sort of throughout that whole time period, because it was COVID, it was climate, it was Gaza eventually, it was student.
The examples that you gave, they were not light criticisms when I read this. So.
Well, COVID, a lot of this was also them trying to do stuff behind the scenes. I mean, these were people that, and not just them, by the way, this was done.
Oh man, that's not specific enough. Between 2020 and 2024, they were getting blacklisted. That is so vague, bro. That's so vague. That allows a lot of plausible deniability. I'm not gonna lie. That allows a lot of plausible deniability. I do think Hutch, you probably should have determined when that is, but
dozens of content creators had this experience, and journalists as well had this experience throughout the Biden administration. You can read about it in Alex Thompson's great book. The Biden administration was they became more and more intense about restricting access to the administration, restricting access to press, they for good reason. Now we know why, but it is a fact.
Okay, I want listen. I don't want to bombard you. Let me make one more kind of if you don't mind, if you're okay, I'd like to ask you just one more question regarding the piece, and then we can kind of get to the overall point and just finish.
How come you never asked me or Pisco or Guy?
Okay, let's hear it.
So the part of your reporting that I think is the weakest, the most vulnerable to attack, is your characterization of the.
I think Hutch so far is 2 for 2 in terms of his criticism. Taylor has been floundering.
Contract language, specifically when you
Hutch is the tax hero way better than Destiny's. I'm sorry, that's just the truth.
Talked about the contract required chorus creators to funnel booking appearances through chorus. They had to get express authorization before they what was it, put up content or set up interviews, this kind of a thing.
No, they had to leverage the chorus newsroom when they were booking appearances
in the contract. That's what it said.
Yeah,
but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, and look, certain people had certain aspects of the contract enforced against them. Certain people didn't have aspects of the contract enforced against them. And
did you see any creators that were told that they had to funnel all their bookings through chorus?
We did speak to a creator who didn't sign the contract because
of that.
No,
that's not what I asked. Hang on.
Yeah, they were told that. Yes, they were told that. Yes, they were told that.
Not that they were told. I'm asking you, did you actually get a single example from any creator who actually had to funnel booking through chorus?
Well, yeah, we spoke to a lot of creators that funneled booking through chorus.
No.
Yes.
Hang on. I'm asking you, did you talk to anyone that told you that all of the bookings that they did had to go through chorus?
We spoke to a creator who was told that all of the bookings that they had to do if they wanted to do bookings, it would have to be filtered through chorus. And so he chose not to take that. Just let me finish. Why don't you let me finish?
You're not answering my question.
I am answering your question.
You're not. I'm asking you in practice. Did you have a single example of a creator who told you?
So her only example is that one person was told something and therefore they didn't sign with chorus. Hutch is focusing on when they are signed, was this the process? So that's basically what they're arguing over.
That chorus in practice told them they had to funnel everything through chorus.
Yes.
What you just described was not that. So
I'm trying to give you additional context, but you don't want it.
No, I do, but you're not answering my question.
I just answered your question. Yes.
I don't think you are.
Can you repeat it, Taylor, just in case Hutch missed something? But I'm not sure I heard it to be the same as what was described in the article. So
we spoke. I don't even think we went into this amount of detail in the article. we spoke to a creator that was told when he pushed back on the contract before the contract was signed. He was like, hey, I kind of want to sign this contract. I kind of want to do this program, but there's this clause that says I have to use the Chorus newsroom. Do I really have to use the Chorus newsroom for booking? He was told through his agent, yes, you do have to use the Chorus newsroom for booking. Other people, when they took part in the program, when they said, oh yeah, I'm going to book this thing, they were told you have to use the Chorus newsroom for that. And they did ultimately use the Chorus newsroom. Other people used the Chorus newsroom and never questioned it. It was in the contract, and it would have never occurred to them to even question what was in the contract because they signed a contract saying this, so they didn't challenge it. When they were asked for comment on this, Chorus didn't deny it. And that's the truth. That's all the information.
They didn't respond to it, but that's not the same as verifying.
No, they didn't deny it.
That's not the same as verifying that the letter of the contract was actually being enforced, and that's the big issue here.
They didn't deny it, and they didn't deny it.
But that's still your job as a journalist to verify that it's.
That's a terrible burden of proof. You didn't deny my claims against you, so therefore my claims are true. What? That's never how truth was worked. No, you need to back up your claims with evidence. You don't get to make claims and I have to rebut them. That's not how it works. What?
Did verify it with the content creators who said on the record that this happened, and that's why it's in the story.
I don't think you demonstrated that in the story.
You have a quote from a creator saying that he chose not to sign the contract over this.
That's not the same thing, though. I feel like you're being quite.
So to be clear, like Taylor, there's a difference between a creator understood this contract to be I can't do anything unless I go through the newsroom, and they were not allowed to do it unless they went through the newsroom, and unless they clarify that because they did not comment, it's not really established. And the article portrays it as that is exactly how it was.
The contract that is all evidence that we have shows that that's how it was. But did some people that maybe not have the contract enforced against them? Sure, I'm sure, because clearly they were only enforcing certain parts of the contract for certain people. Yes. So clearly.
Well, no, I mean, what is your evidence for that, by the way?
Speaking to the content creators.
Nothing about that was in your article. That gave me the sense that they were giving preferential treatment and not enforcing it here and enforcing it there. That was not in your article.
Well, literally, I mean, you can see in the article, certain people, why do you think this article exists? Because the content creators were frustrated. They wanted to speak out about things. They felt like they weren't able to speak out. That's part of why they spoke.
Well, the other thing was like the takedown clause. Like that sounds very restrictive, right? The way that your article describes that language is that, Chorus reserved the right to like strike down any content.
I mean, we quote directly from the contract. Yeah.
I understand. The problem here, Taylor, is with all three of these things, the funneling, express authorization, takedown clauses, would this not be standard language in a contract for a 501c4?
I've seen a lot of these contracts. I just wrote another story for Wired on another dark money influencer program, and none of this language has been in the other contracts that I've seen that are for similar programs.
Okay, but you understand that, like, obviously, like a 501c4, they have to be in compliance with like the law, and to protect their status, they can't have a certain threshold of their operational structure and funds and stuff going towards things like campaigns and elections and things like that. So in that context,
I'm telling you, I write about dark money.
Hang on, real quick. Could you not read this language as a company that is trying to protect itself, the status, and the creators themselves from violating the law?
Well, the creators themselves often didn't agree with what was in the contract and were frustrated that they couldn't.
Wholly non-response. Like, she is an expert of not responding to things that are being said to you. For people who don't understand, what Hutch is saying here is that they are requiring you to go through specific processes to ensure that you're not utilizing the organization in a way to violate the law, and therefore, like, campaigning for different specific politicians. They want to make sure that you're not doing that because that's illegal. So that's why they want you to go through them to make sure it's all legally compliant. Just like how Taylor had to go through her lawyers to put out her article, not lawyers or legal counsel, whatever it is, to put out her article. They just want to make sure you're compliant. So that's Hutch's argument, which I do think very fair.
Speak out, for instance, and disclose that they were in the program. There's nothing to do with the law. Well, that's in the contract, and that's exactly what we're talking about here, right?
No, it's not, though. I'm talking about the funneling, express authorization, takedown clauses. All of these can be explained by 501c4 trying to be compliant with the law.
No, because I just wrote about another 501c4 that literally just ran another dark money campaign. In some cases, approached some of the same exact Chorus influencers, and none of this was in that contract. So,
but their lack of potentially standard 501c things is not evidence that this.
But I'm saying it's not standard. You guys are saying it's standard. I'm saying I have not seen it in other contracts. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist in some contracts.
Hutch, are you claiming it's standard? You're not claiming it's standard, are you?
Well, based on what I looked into, this language would be consistent with a 501c4 that is protected.
Is it your claim that it's standard or not?
Hang tight, Pisco. We can talk in a second. So Taylor,
conveniently, he doesn't want to answer you. Conveniently,
if a creator, for example, uploaded a video to their channel where they were endorsing a particular candidate, and the channel, this video was framed as something that came from Chorus. Could that threaten Chorus's nonprofit status?
I think you'll have to look into the details of sort of like how that creator was.
Yeah.
Holy non-answer. Jesus fuck. Holy non-answer. Go on.
Yes.
Closing it.
The answer is
Okay.
yes. It could possibly threaten their status. So if they had a clause in their contract that they could take down content, would it not be a better, like a good faith interpretation that they could very easily be trying to protect?
I've never seen a C4 put this stuff in a contract before.
Okay.
And
Well,
I've
I mean,
written
I can
about
look into that
others
after
before. I've
after
written about
this.
others before. But maybe they do, maybe they do. But like I said, I have reported on campaigns and I haven't seen it there before. I haven't, for instance, the Build American AI thing I just wrote about, they don't have Build American AI newsroom that you have to use, like I haven't seen this sort of
Would you
language.
concede that it's possible? Would you concede that it's possible that this language was specifically crafted to make sure that they were compliant with the law?
Until they comment on the record and explain their thinking behind it, I mean, we have no idea what their motivations were.
Well, but Taylor, I mean, like, let's be realistic here. Like, obviously, there are things that these people are restricted by. They cannot appear partisan in certain aspects, and
But
so
that doesn't trickle down to the creator. And I'm actually not confident at all in your reading of that. I would really want to talk to a lawyer, and I'd want to talk to somebody that works on these contracts and say, hey, I've reported on lots of these contracts. Why is it only in this contract and not others? Why do they structure it this way and not in other ways?
My
And you're
question
saying
is, why would you not immediately look at this like news reporter tool? Because the way it's painted in the article is like this cynical.
Yeah, you can't make the claim. All right, hold the fuck on. What do you mean you got to talk to a lawyer? You didn't talk to a lawyer before you made the claim that they're doing something nefarious? This is what I'm talking about. Your burden of proof is if you do not debunk what I'm saying, that I am correct. I am in the right. I am truthful. You didn't fact check your claims beforehand? Is the only thing you did is put out an article, make sure it is SEO friendly, and make sure it's legally compliant to not being put out through a defamation suit? Did you not like factually understand what things are being said in the contract? You didn't even do that. Okay, Taylor. Okay, Taylor. I'm glad that's how it works. W journalism.
Controlling tool, and not what it makes the most sense to me, which is you need to make sure that we're not violating the law when you're reaching out to these places.
Because I've never known another C4
were able to
campaign
schedule things outside with other politicians, so long as it wasn't chorus related, right?
Yeah,
That was
I've
the whole
never.
point.
My point is that I've written about all these campaigns. I've never seen this language in a contract before. I'm not familiar with any sort of booking systems that other people use. I would be very surprised. I talk to content creators that take part in a lot of these sort of campaigns. This is not standard from what I've seen. I'm sorry.
Well,
I know that it's your
This is a
interpretation
new kind
of
of.
it.
This is a new kind of media thing, right? Like it's still
No,
pretty
it's not
pretty
that
novel.
new. No.
For
Trump is, the
501c4s
right wingers
doing
have been doing
political
this.
stuff,
They've been doing this for a while. The right wingers do it all the time. And
you're well aware that 501c4s can lose their nonprofit status if they do too much electioneering, or if they do like event content like around like political campaigns and things like that.
Yeah,
and so I question why it seems as though you and your team didn't even consider that.
We
this
did
language
actually.
in the
We did. I mean,
contract-
we did talk to other people. I had lawyers look at this contract. I had contract lawyers. Not to mention all the Hollywood agents.
Bro, what is going on? How are you gonna say I have lawyers who look at this contract, then go like, I have to talk to a lawyer? I don't believe your characterization. Like something not adding up, bro. Like I'm hearing information and it's just not connecting. 1 + 1 is not equaling 2 right now. The neurons are not moving around in my brain to hit certain parts of my brain to come up with like rational thought and conclusions and solutions based off what is being said to me right now. I'm like, what?
That were involved in this. Half the influencers that we spoke to have agents and managers at major talent agencies that were involved in this. None of them raised this issue. So I'm not saying that.
Were you made aware of any actual instance where Chorus requested to take down content from any creator?
No, we didn't find any enforcement action on that.
Were you made aware of any creator that had to get express authorization before like setting up a interview with a politician?
We did talk to creators that were told they had to use the Chorus news.
No, but you keep doing this, Taylor. Come on, you're being.
I'm just telling you. I'm sorry.
I'm not talking about people who are afraid of the contract.
But listen,
You're
all I
right.
can tell you is what my reporting says, and I
right?
know you guys want more. All I can tell you is what my reporting says and what I found and who we spoke to. I'm sorry. I'm not going to keep going around in circles. It is so.
One criticism I ever had, like, of course, the grilling, amazing, Picasso. It is a podcast. You do have to let IRI and Soy Pill Pisco ask questions. It can't be just like a one-on-one necessarily. You know, it is a podcast with everybody here. So I do think like prepare all you got to prepare, but like be willing to bring everybody else into the conversation.
Pointless. None of this is relevant. You don't seem to have this
Well,
issue with any other article that I've written about this stuff. It's crazy. It's
This
just
is the only
this one.
article of yours that I'm familiar with. I did a
Okay,
lot
so
of,
then
I
you
spent a
don't
lot of
actually
time.
know. Like, okay, all right. I'm sorry
Okay.
that like I'm trying
Listen,
to explain to you
I don't
what we
want
found in
to.
our reporting.
That's fine. I don't.
Like, I think the problem here is I don't necessarily think Taylor's evil. I think she has a predisposition to advocate for the leftists, and her morals and I don't even want to say morals. Her perception on like who the enemy is kind of fucked, leading her down like paths that are not the most productive. I do think if she was like steered in a better direction, she would be perfectly fine. That's why she's kind of floundering, because she really can't defend anything that Hutch is saying. She can't defend it. Her defenses are dog shit. But I don't get the sense that it's like done in malice. Do I want to say that? I don't know if I want to say that. I don't know. Maybe she gets the pretty woman good smile tax.
I don't want to press you further. I just want to say that, I do think that you had an agenda with this article. I do think that you had opinions that you put in the article.
You can join the many
that
I have
narrative,
agendas on.
I think the narrative that you were pressing was that the big, bad, corrupt establishment was paying Democratic shills and suppressing leftist voices. I think that is
leftist voices.
the crux of
Where's the leftist voices in that? Where does it say leftist? Where are you even getting that from?
The opinions that seem to be censored, like oh, it's Gaza or too pro climate change, too pro, like these are more progressive, more leftist ideas that are as based on what the article is saying.
You guys sound like TikTokers.
But that's what it says in the article. What do you mean?
I mean, I just honestly, can I tell you, this is I'm sorry to trigger you with,
bro, this is so annoying. Like, people don't understand perception. People need to do a class on perception. People need to do a class on perception.
the word centrist. This is a mainstream centrist Democrat program. Okay, it's for mainstream centrist Democrats, right? Look at the people that are in it. Overwhelming. Brian Tyler Cohen. I would say they're not trying to get radical anarchists for this program. Do you think they are?
I think most reasonable people, when they look at Brian Tyler Cohen, I don't think they would call him a centrist. I think they would call him a partisan Democrat.
Okay, a Democrat. This is a program by a notorious pro-Democrat group running a program to increase the Democrats.
What does that mean? Notorious.
Well, 1630 fund is pretty notorious. It's a pretty big deal. I mean, it's a
We're
huge.
talking about 1630. We're talking, of course.
1630, which is the funder behind all of it, right? 1630 is a notorious dark money group. It is literally the liberal answer to the Koch network. I mean, it's very well known. They do a lot of work in the Democrat space.
Listen, that's a separate conversation about like, about like should Democrats do any kind of dark money stuff while this is the letter of the law because of Citizens United.
Sure. Who cares? But we can debate it.
Fine.
But I'm just saying, like, you guys have this thing, like I have to say, it really annoys me, I guess, because like, I think it's very revealing that you don't engage with most of my work.
Wait a second. I don't need to familiarize myself with your entire body of work to critique this article, Taylor.
Well, I think that the fact that you have only engaged with my work through tweets and through this article has given you a view of things that I would argue.
Taylor, you can't throw that at me. I like your pro privacy or anti privacy law or pro privacy laws. I like your anti
okay, but like this is crazy
stuff,
that
so,
with it,
I have
like
the same views.
But Taylor, I saw you making claims about these people. You said that out of the 90 creators, they're primarily pro-Israel.
The ones that we found.
That's a pretty big claim, but you couldn't name anybody. That's
well, I'm not going to put them out. I'm not going to. We didn't name the majority of content creators that we found in the program. We didn't name.
Of the ones that you named in the article, you couldn't name a single one that was pro-Israel.
I know that's now who's twisting the words. I said you'll have to go through and ask. I don't even remember which creators we named in the article, but you can go through and the ones we did, and you can ask them their stance on Israel.
No, but this is your words. You said that they were primarily pro-Israel, and of all the people you named in the article, you can't give me one. That's bizarre.
Okay, go ask them. Go ask them then. Go ask them. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm asking you. You did reporting on them.
It doesn't say anything about Israel in the article. I don't know what to tell you.
That was your commentary.
He's referring to your tweet on the 27th.
Yeah, and that's my tweet, and I'm not gonna list out the influencers that are not even named in our piece in a tweet. I'm giving commentary on my article. You can read the article all you want. I don't know what to tell you. You guys seem. It's
called like you can't refer to your article with names in your article, and then say people in chorus are pro-Israel and act like you're surprised on why people are insinuating that you're calling these people in the article also pro-Israel. Like you can't do that. Taylor, you can't do that. It's just, it's so
Crazy,
ridiculous.
what's so crazy to me about all of this is that for whatever reason, this like random, like these random people like you, this Destiny person, it's like they are like they have all these issues with the article that like this.
She knows who Destiny is. she knows who Destiny is. Destiny person. You know who Destiny is. Come on, Taylor. You spoke with him multiple times. Don't try to play that game.
1930 Fund doesn't have any issues with it. Even the chorus lawyers like don't
I'm
have
not asking about
issues.
anybody else. I'm just reading.
But it's just,
I'm just-
but I understand, and I do my best. I really try to be an open book, and I really do. Like I go out of my way to engage with people like you that have questions. But at a certain point,
I
you
felt
do
like I
have
asked
to
you good
recognize.
questions, and you got very evasive and frustrated with me.
I
And
would
don't,
completely disagree with that characterization. I do not think that you're coming in.
I think
good faith.
everybody
I think that you
watched-
have a clear
I did
view
a
of
lot.
it.
I read that a lot. I looked into a lot of this stuff. I spent a lot of time on this. I didn't
I
want
think
to
you
take that out of
probably have
context.
gone down a lot of wild goose chases
Hutch
on
hasn't
something
been in
that's
bed
pretty
for
straightforward.
days.
Do you
It's pretty
think influencers that
straightforward.
use this? Do you think that like left-wing commentators that use this article to push a narrative that these creators were being paid to be quiet about Israel? Do you think that they were being irresponsible?
I have said from the jump that Israel was never a qualification that we
I'm asking you,
found.
do you
to
think that
be
it
part
was
of this program.
Oh my God, another non-answer. If this was my full-time job, I would put a timer. I would put like a ding every time she just does not answer a question that is asked to her directly.
Responsible of them to do that.
Well, as I just said, I'm answering you, and I'm sorry. I know you keep wanting me to say a specific string of words, and I'm just answering you
I
as
think
best
it's a
I
fair
can.
question because a lot of people that you're friendly with did push that narrative that they were being paid to be quiet about genocide, which I think is a really disgusting accusation.
What
to
I
make.
would say is that if is that we don't know the ideological makeup, and I said this publicly since the article went up. We don't know the true ideological makeup of the entire cohort because
Well, why'd you say they're
refuse-
primarily centrist?
Those are the people that we found, and as I have said from
There's
the
90
beginning,
people.
my God, again, if the ideological makeup of this program is different, this is an argument for why they should be transparent. Because right now, the people
you
that
made the
we
claim.
found do share certain ideology. They do share certain belief systems. And if there's this secret group of leftists or further to the right people or other libertarians or who knows what that is also being funded by this program, then I think it's
So her claim is, I get to call you pro-Israel, and the people who use my article get to call you pro-genocide until you prove them that you're not. That's her claim here. That's legit her claim here. We get to do that. We can make things up about you until you prove that you're not. What is this? What world do I live in where that's how, imagine different trials and criminal cases. Imagine if it is, my claim against you is true until proven innocent. Let's reverse it.
it would behoove them to publish the roster because
But
now
until that comes out, Taylor, is it irresponsible for influencers to cast aspersions and just assume that
I
this
think
is this
influencers
giant?
should be arguing for transparency and say
Okay, but
until
that's not what they're doing. So would
Another
it be irresponsible?
non-fucking answer. She is a legend at not answering. Are you going to criticize the people who are making like blanketed claims without evidence that these guys are pro-genocide? I think people should argue for transparency. Like, what the fuck? Like, what? Yo, I'm going insane.
I
make
think there's
these
so much
conclusions.
irresponsible
Of
stuff on
course.
TikTok, and I'm not going to litigate every single thing.
W MAGA response. Everybody's bad.
But yes, of course they're being irresponsible. Of course there's people being irresponsible. However, that doesn't mean that I think that they're making baseless conclusions based on the very small amount of sort of view that they have into it. I'm sympathetic to the people that run the program. If they say, well, this is not representative, I would say, this is an argument for transparency, right? If you have this whole other class of content creators that are part of your program that have radically different beliefs than the content creators that were made public, then why can't they come? Why can they still not come forward? Why can they still not publish their content? Why can they still not speak out?
Legendary.
Why are you still not publishing?
You would have to ask them, but the merits of your reporting are your own, and you're accountable for the things that you say. And when you say, you look at a list of 90 people and they're primarily centrist, and then 2 seconds ago you say,
sorry,
we don't really
I would
know
say
the ideological
pro-Democrat.
leanings.
We do no. First of all, the section of creators that we saw, they're pro-Democrat, they're pro, and I would call that centrist. Now there are also
Really?
Just pro-Democrat?
Really?
well.
Pro-democratic centrist.
Establishment, they're pro-establishment Democrat. We're not talking about radicals. You're talking about the
What does
radical.
that mean?
What I mean is that like the leftist anarchist people on TikTok don't seem to be part of this program. I haven't seen any of those people a part of this program. I haven't seen those people connected to this program.
Not being radically left is not the same thing as being centrist, Taylor.
Right. I understand that, but
You're
I'm saying
conflating them.
Okay, what label to make you happy so I don't trigger you with the wrong word? What
Something reasonable.
No, okay.
Wait.
tell me the word.
This is
Why
the
don't you
stupidest
tell me-
fucking point of all time. That like the Democratic Party is a center left party, and we embrace that, right? The show's called Live and Learn.
Do you think Brian Tyler Cohen is a
Wait, Hutch.
You
Democratic Party.
What should I
Hutch,
call
Hutch,
them?
Hutch,
Give me
Hutch,
the name. I
Hutch,
don't care.
Hutch, real
Give
quick.
me the name that you want. I don't
Hutch.
care.
The Democratic Party is a center left party. Is that correct?
Is Brian Tyler Cohen a centrist?
Wait, Hutch. Can you answer one question?
No.
Answer one question.
Wait, come on, Pisco. She called the being pro-Democrat centrist, not center. That's not center left, by the way. But also, I would not call it a. I don't even centrist, center left. It encapsulates too many progressive and leftists for it to be monikered a center left party. If you want to argue it, most of the leadership is center left because they keep on getting elected because their policies are more favorable, then sure. But centrist, center left, two different things. And the Democratic Party being center left, I disagree. Like overall.
You answer mine.
Answer one question. Is the Democratic Party center
you
left?
answer mine. Is Brian Tyler Cohen a centrist?
Wait,
All right. Hutch.
I'm
You
center
know what,
left.
I'm
You're
asking
center
you
left.
first,
We're
and then
we're
Hutch answers
centrist.
Pisco's question.
Okay.
She's saying, shit, like that. These are not me punching Pisco. This is me letting out frustration.
So what is the right word?
Hutch,
What is the term that we
wait.
have?
Answer the question. Hutch.
You
Is the
were
Democratic
using
Party?
centrist.
Hutch.
You were using
Hutch,
centrist as a pejorative, and you know that's what you were doing.
That's
That is
different.
what
Hutch.
you were
Is
doing.
Hutch is the Democratic Party a center left party?
Yes, broadly, yes.
Okay. So if what is meant by centrist, right? It's the stupidest fucking point. If what all is meant by centrist is you're aligned with the Democratic Party, then this is all analytical, right? By definition, being aligned with the Democratic Party on your own view.
When you think of the word
On your,
centrist,
no, you would have to show in any given case that the use of centrist is more specific and that you're trying to call out something, and maybe that is actually what Taylor is doing when she's using centrist. Stop. Wait. You can't be complaining about interruptions when you're interrupting everyone all over the place, all right? So in any given context, I think it's on you to just to decipher what the intent is behind using the centrist label. But the Democratic Party is a center left party.
She was using the word centrist because the people that she was trying to appeal to with that article, and I think it's obvious who she was trying to appeal to, use that word in a disparaging way. Similarly to how they use the word liberal in a disparaging way. You know that Taylor uses.
Would
these
you
words
guys not
as a
describe
pejorative.
liberal?
You know
Do you
that.
guys not describe liberal? Do you not describe
Oh,
yourself as
liberal is appropriate. That's an appropriate label.
Okay, so
Liberals
let's
are
call
center
them
left, correct?
liberals. So let's call them
No,
liberals.
well,
and that will make you
can
happy.
do, well, you
Call
can have
them
progressive
liberals.
liberals too, right? I mean, I like when I look at Brian Tyler Cohen's his like overall priorities and
Is
his
he liberal? Is he liberal?
I would call him a progressive liberal. Very
Oh, be a
confidently,
liberal,
I would
a
call him a
liberal,
progressive
great.
liberal.
Okay, we will use the word liberal, and that will make you happy.
Well, I wish
So
you would have
the
used that
context-
in the article instead of saying centrist, because you know
Okay,
that you were
honestly-
using that as a pejorative.
Honestly, you have to call up some copy editor and say that to them. But if she had wanted a correction, she could have gotten a correction. But my
That's
point is,
besides the point, though.
it is not beside the point. She could have actually, if that was such a radical mischaracterization of her views, she could have reached out and gotten a correction. I would argue it's not a radical mischaracterization of her views. That
Is it a
said,
false statement? Right? Is it a false statement to call her centrist? I think that's the question. Is it an accurate, Hutch? Is it an inaccurate statement in the article?
Yes, I think it is. Yes.
To call Olivia Juliana centrist?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether or not it's accurate. What matters is it is
No,
clear that calling
but
these
why
people
can't
centrist is coming from an
accuracy
ideological
absolutely
perspective, right?
accuracy absolutely like
No,
what is so hard about doing
listen, I'm doing this. It's not about the
That's
accuracy,
crazy.
whether or not this person
Not
is
even
centrist.
fucking close,
If
I'll be
everyone
honest.
in a certain ideological camp calls these people centrist, it is clear that this is coming from a specific ideological perspective and not just this is objective reporting
I
about
just
whether
don't
or
think
not
that the
it-
Wired
is it- is it
articles, I don't think
relevant
the
to-
Wired editors are like out to get someone.
Look,
We're literally just
putting
trying to
out
describe
to
issues.
get-
so-
Now,
so-
I'm taken. I will use the word liberal. I will use the word
So-
liberal, and when I write about these people again, I will use the word liberal. I can promise you that. So that
Well,
you
I
don't-
think you were
I'd
establishing.
like to
a
respond to Soy
path
Pill. So it's the potted plant's turn to talk. All right. So real quick on your on your point, Soy Pill, you say, well, in certain circles, this term can mean something else. I'm totally open to us having that discussion, but I think it's relevant to discuss whether the article is accurate first. That's a relevant thing to consider
And
first,
then we
right?
can say, okay, some people might accurately describe her as a centrist, depending on your ideological point of view, and we can use this to
Right, so-
frame what kind of ideology
To the extent that it's
came from
accurate,
this
it's
article, yeah.
to the extent that it's accurate, it's trivial to observe that most content creators are centrist, because if all you mean by centrist is democratic aligned, then of course it's going to be
Right, and then you can use that to say, well, who's
but
calling
that's-
all pro-Democrats centrist, and what kind
What
of
I'm taking-
I
ideology
think
is that?
most Democrats are liberals.
demonstrate.
Are they not? Are they not liberal? Is the
We're not talking
Democrat
about-
not the
we're
liberal
talking about
party,
the term
guys?
Liberal. We're not talking about the term liberal.
But
We're
you
talking about
said,
the
but
term
we're talking. Okay,
You
centrist.
use that term. You
is-
use that term. It wasn't your editor in your tweet. You use
Sure,
that term.
I use the term
Yeah.
centrist all the time. I use the term centrist all the time,
In a
but I'm saying it's,
pejorative way.
Oh
Anyone
my
can search
God.
your Twitter feed and see
you
when
could
you
also
use
say
the
I
word
use the
centrist.
term and you can search my Twitter feed for the term leftist. See what I have to say about the term leftist on my Twitter feed, and see if I'm being really nice about it.
I will after this. I will. I'm
Oh, please
curious
go
about
do
that.
it right away. You'll
I think
see
you
why.
use that language for a particular reason, Taylor.
No, I
That's what
use
think
language.
you-
I am criticizing different political factions constantly, and you'll see. Please search the word leftist
Well, in
and see
this
what I have to say
story-
about the leftists. Please search this
In
word.
this story,
Okay,
you're
I understand-
establishing
I
a cast of
understand.
heroes and villains. That's what
Oh
you're
my
doing.
God. Okay, literally, I'm sorry. I know you think that I have this like this is like I feel it does remind me of the Tim Pool universe in a sense because I have to say.
All right, let's see. Let's look up what Taylor says about leftists. Me repeats a reactionary leftist stupid claim about Cuba back to him in a single X reply. Fair enough. This is a all right. Cuba prevent the spread of HIV parity because I'm a very serious leftist. Okay. I am a serious leftist. I stand with the Heritage Foundation. Will be harmed by the mass surveillance. How dare Taylor stand with immigrants, justice activists, marginalized people, and everyone who be harmed by the mass surveillance. I am a serious leftist. I stand with the Heritage Foundation. What? Um. Possible. Billionaire bat dark money grooves. Not lying. So there's a little bit more of a mix on how she uses leftist. Centrist is all negative connotation. Every single time she says centrist, she's using it in a negative way. Leftist, a little bit more variety. It's not complete like positivity. No way. But there's more variety. But that means you use leftist as a more nuanced term. Centrist at the end of the day is only used negatively. So the claim still stands.
Okay, like it's like this like niche obsession with like you're secretly our enemy and you're secretly our
I don't
enemy.
think you're
and you,
secret
like,
about it.
wanted to,
I don't think you're secret
no,
about
you
it.
say
I
you
think
hate Democrats,
I think you
Taylor.
have
You're very open
open,
about that.
yeah, you have open
No, as
sort of
Democrats, you
hostility
drive me
towards.
crazy, but so do the Republicans. I
No,
don't know.
I think you've displayed in the past like open hostility towards like people that you consider to be like the establishment or centrist or pro-Israel. But then when I press you on like what these terms mean, you don't really have like great answers.
Leftists, and look at what I have to say about the right, and look at what I have to say about like literally look at all my political. Like I know that you don't want to engage with other stuff, and I know you feel that you're sort of I've been very critical about your ideology, but if you think that's because
I'm not offended by that. I don't care about. I'm talking about your.
But you clearly think that because I'm critical of your ideology, that then I sort of ascribe to this other ideology that you really don't like.
I don't know if
and
this is about ideology. To be honest with you. I have no idea. I really no, but I don't know. I don't know what motivates you, but I do know that in the context of this article, you were establishing like a cast of villains, and in this case, you had like these pro-Israel centrists.
It doesn't say anything about Israel in our article. They're just pro. They are pro.
You added that commentary after the fact, and then other creators used your commentary to push a narrative about them being paid to cover for genocide.
Well, the Democratic Party, I would argue, has run cover for a genocide.
Isn't
that kind of why they lost part of it?
That's a separate thing. They're smearing the entire operation as being about like covering for genocide.
All right, I pretty much got the gist of it. Hutch cooked. Let's look at the comment section real quick before we end the stream. Look at my lawyer, Hutch dog. I'm going to jail. Based. I just remember that Ira was just sitting there silent. I couldn't stop laughing. Facts. Thank God Hutch is soy pill have spines. Facts. Bernie's centrist. I know she lost me with that one. She so even the most basic question, she can't stop herself from engaging in like the non-answers. Can't if ask other people to do the work for you. Shout out. Hutch is king. She doesn't want to take credit for the article. She did. Yeah, everybody is catching on to it. Pisco, I do think Pisco wanted to provide like more nuance to the conversation maybe provide an outlet that a perspective that is not being entertained. So I don't want to be super like bad Pisco. But I do, because I also like sometimes I do the devil's advocate thing where I'm like, we're all just getting up on her. But I do think like she was being so bad, bro. She was not answering anything. Well, anyway, that's all I got. Hope you guys enjoyed. You have a good one. Take care.